father stops to help a stranger in a storm, he destroys his one chance at saving his family. Or does he? Ethan Brooks had exactly 17 minutes to make the interview that would change everything. But the woman screaming from inside that flooded luxury car didn't know about his empty bank account, his son's worried eyes, or the eviction notice burning a hole in his pocket. Every second he spent digging her car from the mud was another second closer to disaster. He helped her anyway. By the time he realized what it cost him, it was already too late. Stay with me until the end, hit that like button, and comment what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The rain hit Ethan Brooks' windshield like gravel thrown by an angry god. Each impact a small violence that made the world beyond his cracked wipers nearly impossible to see. He leaned forward, knuckles white on the steering wheel of his 15-year-old Honda, squinting through the downpour at the narrow back road that cut through the forgotten industrial outskirts of the city. 7:43 in the morning, 17 minutes until the interview started. 17 minutes to cross 12 miles of flooded roads, navigate morning traffic, find parking, and walk into the glass tower downtown where Hartwell Industries kept its executive offices. 17 minutes to smile, shake hands, and convince someone, anyone, that a 34-year-old single father with a community college degree and a 7-year gap in his resume deserved a second chance. His hands were shaking, not from the cold, the heater in his car had died 2 winters ago, but from the electric terror of hope. Real hope, the kind that hurt. "Dad?" The voice was small, uncertain, coming from the back seat. Ethan glanced in the rear-view mirror. His son, Marcus, 8 years old and already too familiar with worry, stared back at him with dark eyes that looked too old for his face. The boy clutched his backpack against his chest like a shield. "Yeah, buddy. Are you going to get the job?" Ethan's throat tightened. He'd been asking himself the same question for 3 weeks, ever since the recruiter had called him out of the blue. An interview with Hartwell Industries wasn't just an opportunity. It was a miracle. The kind of company that didn't usually look twice at guys like him. Guys who'd started in engineering, shown real promise, then walked away from it all when their wife died and left them holding a 1-year-old baby and a mountain of medical debt. "I'm going to try my best," Ethan said, forcing his voice to sound steady. "That's all anyone can do, right?" Marcus nodded, but he didn't look convinced. Smart kid, too smart. He knew what was writing on this. He'd seen the eviction notice taped to their apartment door. He'd heard his father on the phone with the landlord, promising, pleading, buying time they didn't have. "Mrs. Chen is going to pick you up from school today, remember? I might be late." "Because of the interview?" "Yeah, because of the interview." "Okay." Marcus looked down at his backpack. "Dad?" "Yeah?" "Good luck." Something cracked open in Ethan's chest. He blinked hard against the burning in his eyes. "Thanks, buddy. Love you." "Love you too." Ethan pulled up to the elementary school, watching as Marcus climbed out into the rain, his bright yellow raincoat instantly soaked. The boy waved once before disappearing through the front doors, and Ethan sat there for just a moment longer than he should have, his heart hammering against his ribs. Then he pulled back onto the road and pressed the gas pedal down. The back road was supposed to be faster. That's what the navigation app had promised. 15 minutes saved by cutting through the old industrial district instead of joining the nightmare of morning traffic on the highway. Ethan had driven it twice already this week, timing it, memorizing it, turning his interview into a military operation because he couldn't afford to leave anything to chance. But the app hadn't predicted this storm. Rain hammered down so hard it turned the road into a river, the drainage ditches on either side overflowing, the asphalt disappearing under inches of rushing water. Ethan's tires threw up sheets of spray as he drove, his heart climbing into his throat every time the car hydroplaned, sliding a few inches before the tread caught again. 7:47, 13 minutes. His phone buzzed in the cup holder. Ethan didn't look at it. Couldn't. He knew what it was. A reminder, an alarm, the kind of helpful notification that felt like mockery now. Interview at Hartwell Industries, 8:00 a.m. Leave early to account for traffic. "I know," he muttered to the phone, to himself, to the universe that seemed determined to keep him down. "I know." The road curved ahead, cutting between 2 abandoned warehouses, their windows dark and shattered. Ethan knew this stretch, straight shot for another mile. then back onto surface streets, then downtown. He could still make it, if the traffic lights were kind, if the flooding didn't get worse, if the universe gave him just one break. That's when he saw the car. At first, it was just a shape through the rain, dark, low to the ground, expensive looking. Then his headlights caught it fully, and Ethan's foot moved automatically to the brake. The car was a midnight blue luxury sedan, something European and sleek, the kind of vehicle that cost more than Ethan had earned in the past 3 years combined. And it was buried up to its doors in mud. The road widened here, creating a shallow turnout where rainwater had pooled and churned the shoulder into a brown soup of clay and gravel. The sedan had clearly tried to navigate around some obstacle and misjudged the depth. Now it sat at an angle, its front wheels sunk deep, its rear end tilted up like a ship going down. And inside, behind rain-streaked windows, someone was moving. Ethan's car slowed to a crawl. His eyes went to the clock on the dashboard. 7:49. 11 minutes. His fingers tightened on the wheel. His interview folder sat on the passenger seat. Resume, references, the cover letter he'd revised 17 times. Everything he needed to walk into that building and prove he was worth the risk. The figure in the car was pounding on the window now. Ethan could see an arm, a hand, the pale flash of a face pressed against the glass. He should keep driving. He knew that. Whoever was in that car had a phone. They could call a tow truck, aka someone who actually had the tools and the time to help. Ethan was not that person. Ethan was a man 11 minutes away from losing everything, but his foot was already on the brake. And then it was on the gas, pulling his Honda onto the shoulder behind the stranded sedan. The moment he opened his door, the storm tried to push him back inside. Rain hit him like a physical force, instantly soaking through his dress shirt, the only one he owned without stains, and plastering his hair to his forehead. The cold was shocking, needle-sharp, turning his breath into visible clouds. Ethan ran toward the sedan, his dress shoes, bought at a thrift store 3 days ago, sinking into the mud with each step. Water filled them immediately, squelching between his toes. He'd wanted to look professional, put together. Now he looked like he'd crawled out of a swamp. The driver's side window was tinted, but through the rain he could make out a woman inside, her hands pressed against the glass. She was shouting something he couldn't hear over the downpour. Ethan tapped on the window. "Can you open it?" The woman shook her head violently, pointing down. The window mechanism must have failed. Too much water, too much mud. She tried the door handle instead, throwing her shoulder against it, but it wouldn't budge. The pressure of the mud against the frame had it sealed tight. "Okay, hang on," Ethan shouted. "I'll try to rock it free." He moved to the back of the car, planting his feet in the sucking mud, and pushed. The sedan didn't budge. Premium engineering meant premium weight, and the mud had it gripped like a vice. 7:52. 8 minutes. Ethan's mind was screaming at him to stop, to get back in his car, to go. But his hands were already moving, searching the ground, finding a thick piece of wood, part of an old pallet, and jamming it under the rear wheel for leverage. "Try to reverse," he shouted, gesturing to the woman inside. "When I push, give it gas." He couldn't see her face clearly, but he saw her nod. Ethan braced himself against the trunk, every muscle in his body coiling. The engine revved. He pushed. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the wheel caught the wood, and the car lurched backward an inch. Then another. Then it was sliding, slowly, agonizingly, pulling free of the mud's grip with a wet, sucking sound that seemed to echo over the rain. The woman gunned the engine. The sedan shot backward onto solid ground, spraying Ethan with a wave of muddy water that hit him chest high. He staggered, coughing, wiping his eyes. When he looked up, the sedan was sitting on the road, engine running, lights on, safe. The driver's door opened. The woman who stepped out was tall and sharp-featured, her dark hair pulled back in a twist that had somehow survived the chaos. She wore a gray suit that looked tailored and expensive, though it was now speckled with mud. Her eyes were fierce, not grateful, not yet. Just fierce, like someone who'd been in a fight and wasn't sure it was over. She looked at Ethan, really looked at him, took in the ruined dress shirt, the mud-caked shoes, the way he was shaking from cold and exertion. "You stopped," she said. Her voice was clipped, professional, carrying a note of disbelief. Yeah, Ethan managed, trying to catch his breath. You were stuck. I was. She reached into her car, pulled out a leather purse that probably cost more than his monthly rent. How much do you want? Ethan blinked rain out of his eyes. What? For your help? How much? She was already pulling out her wallet, her fingers moving with the swift efficiency of someone used to solving problems with money. Ethan shook his head. I don't want anything. I just wanted to make sure you were okay. The woman paused, her hand still on her wallet. She stared at him like he'd spoken a foreign language. You don't want money. No, ma'am, He looked back at his car, at the clock glowing on the dashboard. 7:55. I have to go. Wait. She pulled out several bills. He couldn't see how much, but they were crisp and new. Take this. Please. You helped me. I'm good. Really. Ethan was already backing away, his shoes making obscene sounds in the mud. Glad you're safe. Drive carefully. He turned and ran back to his car, ignoring her voice calling after him. His hands were shaking so badly he could barely get the key in the ignition. When the engine finally turned over, he threw the car into gear and pulled back onto the road. 7:56. 4 minutes. Downtown was 12 miles away. Ethan drove like a man possessed, the speedometer climbing past numbers that would have terrified him on any other day. The rain showed no signs of stopping. If anything, it was getting worse, turning the world into a gray blur punctuated by the red glow of brake lights ahead. Traffic. Of course there was traffic. A semi had jackknifed on the bridge leading into the city center, blocking 2 of the 3 lanes. Cars were backed up for a quarter mile, their hazard lights creating a chain of desperate blinking warnings. 7:58. 2 minutes. Ethan sat in his car, watching the clock, feeling each second tick away like a countdown to disaster. His interview was on the 47th floor of the Hartwell Tower. He'd need to park, get through security, take the elevator up. Even if he sprouted wings and flew, he'd never make it by 8. He pulled out his phone with trembling fingers and dialed the number the recruiter had given him. It rang 4 times before someone picked up. Hartwell Industries, Human Resources, this is Jennifer. Hi, yes, this is Ethan Brooks. I have an interview scheduled for 8 o'clock, but He swallowed hard. I'm stuck in traffic. There was an accident on the bridge, and I'm not going to make it on time. Is there any way we could... Hold, please. The line went silent. Elevator music trickled through the speaker, cheerful and oblivious. Ethan waited, watching the traffic ahead of him inch forward. He moved up 6 feet, then stopped again. The music cut off. Mr. Brooks? A different voice now, male, older, less sympathetic. This is Robert Chen, head of HR. I understand you're running late? Yes, sir. There was an accident and the bridges... I see. And what time do you anticipate arriving? Ethan looked at the line of cars stretching ahead of him, at the rain that showed no signs of stopping. I don't know. Maybe 8:30? I'm so sorry, I left early, but there was... Mr. Brooks, we have a very tight schedule this morning. Your interview was part of a series and we have other candidates waiting. I'm afraid if you can't be here by 8:15 at the latest, we'll need to move on. 8:15. Ethan looked at the clock. 8:02. 13 minutes to cross 6 miles of gridlocked city traffic and climb to the 47th floor. I understand, he heard himself say. I'll do my best. We'll see you when you arrive. The line went dead. Ethan sat there, phone pressed to his ear, listening to silence. Then he set the phone down carefully in the cup holder and pressed his forehead against the steering wheel. This was it. The end. He'd stopped to help someone, and it had cost him everything. The traffic moved forward another 10 feet. Ethan lifted his head and drove because there was nothing else to do. Maybe he'd make it. Maybe the traffic would clear. Maybe Robert Chen would show mercy. Maybe. The rain hammered down. By 8:20, Ethan was standing in the lobby of Hartwell Tower, water dripping from his clothes onto the polished marble floor. The security guard had given him a long, dubious look before waving him through to the elevators. By 8:25, he was on the 47th floor, standing in front of a reception desk where a woman with perfect makeup and a crisp white blouse looked at him like he'd tracked something unpleasant into her pristine space. "I'm here for an interview," Ethan said. His voice sounded hollow. 8 o'clock. I know I'm late, but... Name? Ethan Brooks. She typed something into her computer, her expression never changing. Then she looked up. "I'm sorry, Mr. Brooks. Your interview slot has been filled. Mr. Chen asked me to tell you that while we appreciate your interest in Hartwell Industries, we won't be moving forward with your application at this time." The words hit him like punches. Each one landed in a different place, his chest, his stomach, his throat. "Is there..." He had to stop, swallow, try again. "Is there any way I could reschedule? I had an emergency this morning, but I'm here now, and I'm sorry. The decision is final." She was already looking past him, toward the elevator, dismissing him. "Have a good day." Ethan stood there for a moment longer, dripping on her floor, feeling the weight of his ruined clothes, his son's worried face, the eviction notice waiting at home. Then he turned and walked back to the elevator. The ride down felt longer than the ride up. Ethan watched the floor numbers descending, 47, 46, 45, and tried to figure out what he was going to tell Marcus. How he was going to explain that Daddy had tried his best, but his best wasn't good enough. That they'd have to move again, maybe to the car for a while, maybe to a shelter. The elevator reached the lobby. The doors opened, and Ethan Brooks, 34 years old, single father, former engineer, walked out into the rain with nothing left to lose. He made it halfway across the lobby before he heard it. "Mr. Brooks?" The voice was female, authoritative, cutting through the ambient noise of the building like a knife. Ethan turned. A woman stood near the security desk, tall, sharp-featured, dark hair pulled back in a twist, gray suit, now perfectly clean and dry, without a speck of mud on it, the woman from the storm. Ethan's brain stuttered, trying to process what he was seeing. It couldn't be her, not here, not in this building, not... "Mr. Brooks," she said again, walking toward him, "I need you to come with me." She wasn't asking. Her tone made that clear. This was a statement of fact, delivered with the kind of certainty that came from giving orders and having them followed. "I don't..." Ethan looked around, half expecting security to appear. "I was just leaving." "I know. Don't." She stopped in front of him, and he realized her eyes were gray, the same color as the storm that had brought them together. "My name is Lena Hartwell. I'm the CEO of this company, and I've been looking for you." The lobby tilted slightly. Ethan put a hand on the nearest wall to steady himself. "You're the woman you pulled out of the mud, yes. Also the person who signs your interview authorizations." Lena's expression was unreadable. "I got caught in the storm on my way in this morning, tried to take a shortcut, made a poor choice, ended up stuck. You stopped to help me. Then you refused payment and drove off before I could get your name. I had an interview." "I know. Here. With us. I pulled your file when I got to the office." She paused, and something shifted in her expression. Not quite a smile, but close. "You're very punctual, Mr. Brooks. 4 years at Morrison Engineering, never late, never absent. Then you left to care for your son after your wife passed. The gap in your resume isn't a gap. It's a statement of priorities." Ethan's throat was tight. "I missed the interview." "You missed the scheduled time. You didn't miss the interview." Lena gestured toward the elevator. "Come with me, now." "I don't understand." "You don't have to. You just have to trust me for the next hour. Can you do that?" Ethan looked at her, really looked at her, saw the woman who'd been terrified in that car, pounding on the window, desperate for help. Saw the CEO who commanded this entire building, who could destroy his chances with a word or save them with another. "Yes," he said. "Good." Lena turned toward the elevator, already moving. "We're going to the executive floor. You're wet and muddy, and you look like you've had the worst morning of your life. None of that matters. What matters is whether you can do what I'm about to ask you to do." They stepped into the elevator. Lena pressed a button marked 52, higher than Ethan had been before, higher than he'd imagined going. "What are you going to ask me to do?" he said quietly. The elevator began to rise. Lena looked at him, and her expression was sharp as glass. Prove, she said, that the man I met in the storm is the man I need in this building. The doors opened onto chaos. The 52nd floor was all glass and steel, an open workspace dotted with conference rooms and executive offices. And every single person Ethan could see was in motion, phones pressed to ears, laptops open, faces tight with stress. Lena stepped out of the elevator like she was stepping onto a battlefield. Ethan followed, acutely aware of his muddy shoes leaving prints on the pristine floor. A man in an expensive suit intercepted them immediately. He was silver-haired, sharp-eyed, and radiated the kind of authority that came from decades in power. Lena, thank God. We've been trying to reach you for the last 30 minutes. The Meridian system is down. Completely down. We're losing transactions by the second, and nobody can... He stopped, finally noticing Ethan. Who's this? Someone who's going to help, Lena said. Ethan Brooks, meet Richard Vance, our CFO. Richard, I need you to brief him on the Meridian situation. Everything. Now. Richard stared at her like she'd lost her mind. Lena, with all due respect, we don't have time for... Make time. Brief him, then step back and let him work. Lena's voice was steel wrapped in silk. That's not a request, Richard. For a moment, the CFO looked like he might argue. Then he glanced at Lena's expression and apparently thought better of it. Fine. This way. He gestured toward a conference room, already turning away. But I don't know what you think he's going to... Just brief him, Lena said. Then, to Ethan, you have 1 hour, maybe less. Show me what you can do. She walked away, her heels clicking on the floor, leaving Ethan standing there with a CFO who clearly thought this was a waste of time and a building full of people on the edge of panic. Richard Vance opened the conference room door. Inside, 3 other people sat around a table covered in laptops and papers. A young woman with red hair, an older man in shirt sleeves, and someone who looked barely out of college, their face pale with stress. Everyone, this is... Richard paused, realizing he didn't actually know who Ethan was. Ethan Brooks, Ethan supplied. Right, Ethan Brooks. Lena wants him briefed on Meridian. Richard's tone made it clear what he thought of that idea. Make it quick. Sarah, you start. The red-haired woman, Sarah, looked up from her laptop. Okay, the Meridian platform is our proprietary trading system. It handles all our automated transactions, stocks, bonds, futures, everything. At any given moment, we have approximately $200 million in active trades running through it. Had, the older man corrected grimly. We had 200 million. Right now, we have nothing. System crashed at 7:45 this morning. We've been locked out ever since. Ethan felt something click in his mind, the same sensation he used to get at Morrison Engineering when a problem would suddenly come into focus. Locked out how? The young one, barely out of college, spoke up. Authentication failure. The system won't accept any of our admin credentials. It's like it doesn't recognize us anymore. We've tried every backup protocol, every override, everything in the manual. Nothing works. And the trades? Ethan asked. Frozen mid-transaction, Sarah said. Which means we're hemorrhaging money. Every minute that system is down, we're losing approximately $50,000 in missed opportunities and penalty fees. Richard checked his watch. It's been down for 43 minutes. You do the math. $2 million, gone, and climbing. Ethan pulled out a chair and sat down. Show me what you're seeing. For the next 10 minutes, they walked him through it. System logs, error messages, authentication protocols. Ethan listened, asked questions, and felt his mind working through the problem the way it used to, finding patterns, seeing connections. This happened at 7:45 exactly? He asked. To the second, the young one confirmed. And that's when the storm hit hardest? I guess. I don't know. I wasn't paying attention to... They stopped. Wait, you think the weather caused this? No, Ethan said slowly, staring at the error logs. But I think someone used the weather as cover. The room went quiet. What are you saying? Richard demanded. Ethan pointed to a line of code on the screen. This authentication failure, it's not a system error, it's deliberate. Someone changed the admin credentials from inside the network. They knew exactly when to do it for maximum impact. Right when the storm would keep people from getting to the office. Right when your CEO would be stuck on a back road instead of here to handle it. Sarah's eyes went wide. That's impossible. Only 5 people have access to change admin credentials, and all of them are all of them here? Ethan asked. Right now, in this building? The 3 of them looked at each other. David's not here, the young one said quietly. David Morse. He's one of our senior system administrators. He called in sick this morning. Richard's face went pale, then red. Get him on the phone, now. But Ethan was already moving, his fingers flying across the laptop keyboard. Calling him won't help. If he's smart, he's already gone. But he made a mistake. What mistake? Sarah leaned forward. He assumed nobody would be able to think like him. He built a back door into the authentication system, probably months ago, but he had to leave himself a way back in, just in case he needed it later. That means there's a secondary access point, hidden, but there. Ethan pulled up the system architecture, his mind mapping it the way he used to map circuit designs at Morrison. He could see it now, the elegant brutality of the hack, the way it was designed to cause maximum chaos while appearing to be a simple system failure. But he could also see the flaw, the tiny, arrogant flaw that all hackers left behind. Here, he said, pointing, this subroutine. It's running in the background, maintaining the lockout, but it's also listening for a specific input sequence, a kill switch, in case David needed to undo what he did. Can you trigger it? Richard asked. I can try. Ethan's fingers moved across the keyboard, typing code from memory, adapting it on the fly. The room was silent except for the clicking of keys and the sound of his own breathing. Then, on the screen, something changed. The authentication error disappeared. The system login appeared. Fresh, clean, waiting. Oh my God, Sarah whispered. Ethan typed in the default admin credentials, the ones that would have been active before David changed them. Hit enter. The screen flashed, then filled with data, transaction logs, account access, everything flooding back online. It's working, the young one said, their voice shaking. It's actually working. Ethan didn't stop. He navigated through the system, checking each component, making sure nothing else had been tampered with. Then he pulled up the audit logs and began documenting everything David Morse had done, creating a trail that would stand up in any investigation. 47 minutes after he'd sat down, Ethan pushed back from the laptop and looked up at Richard Vance. The Meridian system is back online. All transactions are resuming. I've locked David Morse out permanently and documented everything he did. You'll want to get your legal team involved and probably law enforcement, but the immediate crisis is over. Richard stared at him, then at the screen, then back at him. Who the hell are you? He said. Before Ethan could answer, the conference room door opened. Lena Hartwell walked in, followed by 2 other people in expensive suits. She looked at the laptop screen, at the team's shocked faces, at Ethan sitting there in his ruined clothes with mud still drying on his shoes. Status? She asked. Resolved, Richard said. His voice sounded hollow. He resolved it in less than an hour. Lena's expression didn't change. Good. Everyone except Mr. Brooks, please leave the room. They left. Sarah grabbed her laptop. The young one practically ran. Richard moved more slowly, casting one last look at Ethan before closing the door behind him. Lena sat down across from Ethan. For a long moment, she just looked at him. Tell me something, she finally said. Why did you stop this morning? You knew you'd miss your interview. You knew what it would cost you. Why stop? Ethan thought about that, about Marcus's worried face, about the eviction notice, about all the reasons he should have kept driving. Because she needed help, he said simply. You needed help, and I could give it. Even though it meant losing everything? I didn't know it was you. I didn't know I'd lose everything. I just knew someone was stuck, and I could help them get unstuck. He met her eyes. I'd make the same choice again. Lena nodded slowly. Then she pulled a folder from the stack one of the suited people had brought in and slid it across the table. This is an employment contract for the position of Senior Systems Analyst. Starting salary is $120,000 per year, with full benefits, equity options, and a signing bonus of $20,000. She paused. I want you to take it. Ethan's hand shook as he opened the folder. The number swam in front of his eyes. I don't understand, he said. I missed the interview. I'm not qualified for... You solved a multi-million-dollar crisis in under an hour. You saw what my entire technical team missed. You did it in wet clothes after the worst morning of your life, without hesitation. Lena leaned forward. That's not something I can find in a resume, Mr. Brooks. That's something I can only find in action. And you proved yourself twice today. Once in the mud, when you thought no one was watching, and once in this building, when everyone was. Ethan looked down at the contract, at the numbers that would mean a real apartment for Marcus. Food on the table, stability, a future. Why me? He asked quietly. Because the world is full of people who know what to do when everything's going right, Lena said. I need people who know what to do when everything's going wrong. People who stop in the storm. People who help, even when it costs them. People who see the problem no one else can see and fix it before it destroys everything. She stood up, extending her hand. You didn't miss your interview, Mr. Brooks. You aced it. Welcome to Hartwell Industries. Ethan stood. His legs felt unsteady. His hand, when he reached out to shake hers, was still trembling. But he shook it. Outside, beyond the glass walls of the conference room, the storm was beginning to clear. Sunlight broke through the clouds in scattered rays, illuminating the city below in patches of gold. Ethan thought about Marcus, waiting at school, about the eviction notice he'd be able to tear up tonight, about the choice he'd made in the rain, the choice that had cost him everything and given him everything back. Thank you, he said, his voice cracked on the words. Lena smiled, a real smile, warm and genuine. Thank me by being as good as I think you are. Deal. Deal. She released his hand and moved toward the door, stopped, turned back. One more thing, Mr. Brooks. That senior administrator, David Morse, he'll face charges, probably jail time. But what he did? Locking us out of our own system? That was impressive in its own sick way. He knew our weaknesses, exploited them perfectly. Yes, ma'am. So from now on, you're also in charge of making sure it never happens again. I want you to think like him. Find every hole in our security before someone else does. Can you do that? Ethan thought about the code he'd seen, the elegant brutality of the hack, about all the other systems in this building, all the other ways they might be vulnerable. Yes, he said. I can do that. Good. Lena opened the door. HR will get you set up. You start Monday. Don't be late. She left, and Ethan stood there alone in the conference room, holding a contract that weighed almost nothing and meant absolutely everything. His phone buzzed. A text from Mrs. Chen. Picked up Marcus from school. He asked if you got the job. What should I tell him? Ethan looked out at the city, at the clearing storm, at the future spreading out before him like sunlight through clouds. He typed back, tell him yes. The weekend passed in a blur of disbelief and preparation. Ethan stood in his apartment Saturday morning, staring at the eviction notice still taped to his door, and carefully peeled it off. The adhesive left a mark on the wood, a ghost of how close they'd come to losing everything. He folded the notice once, twice, then dropped it in the trash can with a satisfaction so profound it made his hands shake. Marcus watched from the doorway of their shared bedroom, his small face cautious with hope. So we're staying? The boy asked. We're staying, Ethan confirmed. He crossed the tiny living room and knelt down to meet his son's eyes. And buddy, we're gonna be okay. Better than okay, I promise. Marcus launched himself forward, wrapping thin arms around Ethan's neck with a force that nearly knocked them both over. Ethan held on tight, breathing in the smell of his son's shampoo, feeling the weight of responsibility and love pressing down on his shoulders in the best possible way. Can we get pizza tonight? Marcus asked, his voice muffled against Ethan's shoulder. Ethan laughed, the sound strange and rusty from disuse. Yeah, we can get pizza. They ordered from the good place, the one with the real mozzarella instead of the cheap substitute. Marcus ate 3 slices and fell asleep on the couch with grease on his chin and a smile on his face. Ethan covered him with a blanket and sat there in the dark, watching his son breathe, letting himself believe that the nightmare might actually be over. Sunday, he used part of the signing bonus to buy new clothes, real professional clothes from an actual store instead of the thrift shop. The woman who helped him was young and enthusiastic, pulling shirts and ties and slacks with an energy that made him feel ancient at 34. First day at a new job? She asked, holding up a navy tie against a crisp white shirt. Yeah, big opportunity. Well, you're going to look amazing, trust me. She smiled at him, and Ethan realized with a start that she was flirting. When was the last time someone had flirted with him? Before the medical bills, before the eviction notices, before he'd become a man who lived in survival mode every single day, he bought the tie, and the shirt, and two others just like it. Monday morning arrived with clear skies and the kind of crisp autumn air that made the city look freshly washed. Ethan dropped Marcus at school, watching the boy run toward the building with a lightness that hadn't been there a week ago. Then he drove to Hartwell Tower, his new employee badge clipped to his belt, his heart hammering against his ribs. The security guard recognized him this time. Mr. Brooks, welcome aboard. Head on up to 52. Ms. Hartwell's assistant will meet you. The elevator ride felt different now. Ethan watched the numbers climb, 20, 30, 40, and tried to calm the riot of nerves in his stomach. He belonged here. Lena Hartwell had said so herself. He'd earned this. The doors opened on 52, and Ethan stepped out into controlled chaos. The panic of Friday was gone, replaced by the normal hum of a high-powered workplace. People moved with purpose. Phones rang. Computer screens glowed with data and charts. A woman in her 50s with silver hair and kind eyes approached him immediately. Mr. Brooks, I'm Patricia Voss, Ms. Hartwell's executive assistant. Welcome to Hartwell Industries. Thank you. Ethan shook her hand, grateful that his wasn't sweating. Ms. Hartwell is in meetings this morning, but she wanted me to get you settled. Your office is this way. Office. The word sent a thrill through him. He'd shared a cubicle at Morrison Engineering, back before Marcus, back when he'd been young and hungry and convinced the world was full of opportunities just waiting for him to grab them. Patricia led him down a corridor lined with glass-walled offices. She stopped at one near the end, opening the door with a flourish. Here we are. Not huge, but the view's decent. Decent was an understatement. The office was small but immaculate, with a desk, a computer, and a window that looked out over the city. Ethan could see the bridge where he'd been stuck in traffic Friday morning, the industrial district where he'd pulled Lena's car from the mud. This is perfect, he said quietly. Patricia smiled. I'll let you get settled. Your computer is already set up with your credentials. Ms. Hartwell has scheduled a meeting with you and the security team at 10 o'clock to discuss your new responsibilities. Any questions before I go? About 1,000, but Ethan just shook his head. I'm good. Thank you. She left, closing the door softly behind her. Ethan stood there alone in his office, in his new clothes, in his new life, and had to put a hand on the desk to steady himself. The morning passed in a whirlwind of introductions and information. The security team consisted of 4 people, 2 network specialists, a cybersecurity expert, and a woman named Jennifer Cho who ran the entire department with quiet competence. They walked Ethan through Hartwell's systems, showing him the architecture, the protocols, the safeguards that had failed to stop David Morse. We've been going over his work history, Jennifer said, pulling up files on her laptop. Morse was with us for 3 years. Exemplary record, no red flags, no indication he was planning anything like this. There wouldn't be, Ethan said. If he was smart enough to build that back door, he was smart enough to hide his tracks. The question is why he did it. The younger network specialist, a guy named Tommy, who couldn't have been more than 25, spoke up. We found unusual activity in his personal trading account. He made some big bets Friday morning, right before the system went down. Bets that would pay off huge if our stock price tanked. Which it would have, Jennifer said grimly, if we hadn't gotten Meridian back online. He was trying to manipulate the market. Use inside access to create chaos, short our stock, make a fortune. Ethan felt something cold settle in his stomach. How much would he have made? If it had worked, probably $3 million, maybe more. $3 million. Enough to disappear. Start over. Live like a king in a country without extradition treaties. Where is he now? Ethan asked. FBI picked him up Saturday night. He'd booked a flight to Singapore for Monday morning. Probably figured he had the weekend to get away clean. Jennifer closed her laptop. He didn't count on you fixing his hack in under an hour. The meeting wrapped up at 11:30. Ethan returned to his office, his mind spinning with everything he'd learned. The systems, the vulnerabilities, the sheer amount of money flowing through Hartwell's networks every single day. It was exhilarating and terrifying in equal measure. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Conference room B. Now. LH. Ethan grabbed his laptop and headed down the corridor. Conference room B was smaller than the one where he'd fixed the Meridian crisis, with a round table and chairs for 6. Lena was already there, along with Richard Vance and 2 other people Ethan didn't recognize, a man in his 40s with sharp features and a woman who looked like she'd stepped out of a fashion magazine. Mr. Brooks? Good. Sit. Lena gestured to an empty chair. This is Marcus Winters, our head of operations, and Diana Chen, chief legal counsel. We need to discuss what happened Friday and what we're doing to prevent it from happening again. Ethan sat, acutely aware that he was the newest, youngest person in the room by far. I've reviewed your preliminary security report, Marcus Winters said, looking at Ethan with an expression that wasn't quite hostile but wasn't friendly either. You've identified 17 potential vulnerabilities in our current systems. 17 that I found in the first 3 hours, Ethan corrected. I'd need more time to do a comprehensive audit, but yes, there are significant gaps in your security protocols. Richard Vance leaned forward. Such as? Such as the fact that your admin credentials haven't been rotated in 8 months. Such as the fact that 3 of your senior staff use the same password for multiple systems. Such as the fact that your backup authentication system is running on software that's 2 versions out of date. Ethan pulled up his laptop, showing them the list he'd compiled. David Morse exploited 1 vulnerability, but there are at least 16 others that someone with his skill level could use. The room was quiet. Diana Chen, the lawyer, broke the silence. And you can fix these? I can, but it's going to require some changes, new protocols. Mandatory security training for anyone with system access, regular audits, and you'll need to give me authority to override department heads if I find a critical vulnerability they don't want to address. Marcus Winters' expression hardened. You've been here less than a day, and you're asking for authority over people who've been with this company for years? I'm asking for authority over security protocols, Ethan said evenly. If someone's doing something that compromises our systems, I need to be able to stop it. That's not about hierarchy. It's about protecting the company. He's right. Lena's voice cut through the tension like a blade. Marcus, I appreciate your concern, but Mr. Brooks isn't here to make friends. He's here to make sure we never have another Friday. If that requires stepping on toes, then toes get stepped on. Clear? Marcus looked like he wanted to argue. Then he glanced at Lena's expression and apparently thought better of it. Clear. Good. Diana, draw up the necessary authorizations. Richard, I want this budgeted by end of week. Any questions? Lena looked around the table. No one spoke. Excellent, Mr. Brooks. I want a full security audit on my desk by Friday. Everything you find, no matter how small. If we're going to fix this company, we need to know exactly how broken it is. The meeting ended. As people filed out, Lena caught Ethan's eye and gestured for him to stay. When they were alone, she closed the door and turned to face him. How are you holding up? She asked. The question surprised him. Fine. Good. This is... He gestured vaguely at the room, the building, everything. This is more than I ever expected. You're overwhelmed. Completely. He saw no point in lying, but I can do this. I know I can. I know you can too. That's why you're here. Lena sat down, and Ethan realized she looked tired. Not physically exhausted, but carrying the weight of 1,000 decisions, 1,000 responsibilities. But I need you to understand something. The people in this building, some of them are going to resent you. You came out of nowhere, solved a crisis they couldn't, and now you have authority they've spent years earning. That's going to create friction. I can handle friction. Can you? Because handling friction in a corporate environment is different than fixing a technical problem. There's no code to debug, no system to override. There are just people with their egos and their politics and their need to protect their territory. She paused. I'm not saying this to discourage you. I'm saying it because I need you to be ready. Ethan thought about that, about Marcus Winters' hostile expression, about the way the security team had looked at him this morning. Part curiosity, part skepticism, part wait and see. What do you need me to do? He asked. Exactly what you're doing. Find the problems. Fix them. Don't apologize for being good at your job. Lena stood, moving toward the door. And Ethan, if someone gives you trouble, real trouble, you come to me. Understood? Understood. She left, and Ethan sat there alone in the conference room, feeling the weight of what he'd taken on, settling onto his shoulders like a physical thing. The week that followed was brutal. Ethan arrived at 7 every morning and left at 7 every night, his laptop stuffed with files and reports that he'd review after Marcus went to bed. He mapped every system, traced every connection, documented every vulnerability with methodical precision. By Wednesday, he'd expanded his list from 17 vulnerabilities to 32. By Thursday, he'd started implementing fixes, working late into the night while the building emptied around him, the cleaning crew nodding at him as they passed his office. Friday morning, he walked into Lena's office and dropped a 200-page security audit on her desk. She looked up from her computer, eyebrows raised. That was fast. You said Friday. It's Friday. Ethan sat down without being invited, too tired to care about protocol. We have problems, big ones. Lena picked up the report, flipping through it. Her expression grew darker with each page. 32 vulnerabilities. That's what I found in 5 days. Give me another month, I'll probably find 50 more. Jesus. She set the report down. How much is this going to cost to fix? 2 million, maybe 3. That's for comprehensive upgrades, new software, security training for everyone with system access, and hiring 2 additional cybersecurity specialists to help maintain everything once it's in place. And if we don't fix it? Ethan met her eyes. Then we're one angry employee away from another David Morse situation. Or worse. Some of these vulnerabilities could allow external hackers to access client data, financial records, proprietary algorithms. We're not just risking our money, we're risking our clients' trust. Lena was quiet for a long moment, her fingers drumming against the desk. Then she picked up her phone and pressed a button. Patricia, get me Richard Vance, now. She looked at Ethan. You're about to make some people very unhappy. I know. Good. As long as you know. Richard arrived within 5 minutes, slightly out of breath. Lena, I was in the middle of Sit. She pushed the security audit across the desk. Read. Richard sat. He read. His face went through several interesting color changes. Pale, red, pale again. This can't be right, he said finally. 32 vulnerabilities? That's impossible. We have a security team. We have protocols. We have gaps, Ethan interrupted. Big ones. And every day we don't fix them is another day we're vulnerable. Do you have any idea what this is going to cost? Richard looked at Lena. $3 million? For what? Making everyone change their passwords more often? For not having our entire company brought to its knees by the next David Morse, Lena said coldly. Richard, I appreciate your concern about the budget, but this isn't negotiable. We're implementing these fixes, all of them, and we're doing it now. Lena, now Richard, I want a budget proposal by Monday. Mr. Brooks, I want you to start implementing the critical fixes immediately. Whatever you need, you get. Clear? Ethan nodded. Richard looked like he'd swallowed something bitter. The CFO said tightly. The meeting ended badly, with Richard storming out and Lena looking like she wanted to throw something. Ethan gathered his papers and stood to leave. Ethan, Lena's voice stopped him at the door. Thank you. For what? For telling me the truth, even when it's expensive. That's rarer than you'd think in this building. Ethan thought about the people he'd met this week, the careful political dances, the way everyone seemed more concerned with protecting their position than protecting the company. You hired me to find problems, he said. I'm just doing my job. Keep doing it exactly like that. He left her office and headed back to his own, his mind already working through the implementation schedule. The critical fixes first, password rotation, software updates, closing the most dangerous vulnerabilities. Then the training, then the long-term infrastructure improvements. His phone buzzed. A text from Mrs. Chen. Marcus has a fever. School called. Can you pick him up? Ethan's stomach dropped. He looked at his watch, 2:30 on a Friday afternoon. He had 3 meetings scheduled between now and 6, including one with the entire security team to present his findings. He texted back, "On my way, 20 minutes." Then he grabbed his jacket and headed for the elevator, already composing an apology email to the security team in his head. The meetings would have to wait. Marcus needed him. The school nurse met him at the front office. Marcus slumped in a chair beside her, his face flushed and his eyes glassy. 101.5, the nurse said, handing Ethan a thermometer. Probably just a virus, but he should stay home until the fever breaks. Ethan pressed his hand to his son's forehead, feeling the heat radiating off the boy's skin. "Hey, buddy, not feeling so good?" "My head hurts," Marcus mumbled, "and I'm cold." "Okay, let's get you home." Ethan scooped his son up. When had Marcus gotten so heavy? And carried him to the car. The boy fell asleep before they'd even left the parking lot, his head lolling against the seatbelt. Back at the apartment, Ethan got Marcus settled on the couch with a blanket and a bowl within reach, just in case. Then he sat down at their tiny kitchen table and opened his laptop, trying to salvage what was left of his workday. His phone rang. Patricia Voss. "Mr. Brooks, we had to reschedule your security team meeting. Ms. Hartwell wanted me to check if everything's all right." "My son's sick. I had to pick him up from school." Ethan looked over at Marcus, who was sleeping fitfully, the blanket pulled up to his chin. "I'm sorry about the meeting. I can do it Monday morning if—" "Don't apologize. Family comes first. Ms. Hartwell was very clear about that when we hired you." Patricia's voice was warm, reassuring. "We'll reschedule for Monday at 9. Take care of your son." She hung up before Ethan could respond. He sat there, staring at his phone, feeling something loosen in his chest. At Morrison Engineering, leaving early for a sick kid would have earned him a lecture about commitment and team players. Here, it was just understood. Maybe this place really was different. Marcus woke up around 6, feverish and asking for water. Ethan brought him a glass and some children's ibuprofen, watching as the boy swallowed the medicine with a grimace. "Dad?" "Yeah, buddy." "Are you going to lose your job?" The question hit Ethan like a punch. "What? No, why would you think that?" "Because you left work. To get me." Marcus's eyes were too bright, fever-shiny, and worried. "What if they get mad?" Ethan sat down on the edge of the couch, pulling his son close. "They're not going to get mad. My boss said family comes first. That means when you need me, I come. Always. Understand?" Marcus nodded against his chest. "I'm sorry I got sick." "Hey, don't be sorry. You can't help being sick. And I'd rather be here taking care of you than anywhere else in the world, okay?" "Okay." They ordered soup from the Chinese place down the street. 1 ton for Marcus, hot and sour for Ethan. Marcus managed half the bowl before falling asleep again, his fever finally starting to break. Ethan worked on his laptop until midnight, updating protocols and writing implementation plans, one eye on his son the whole time. By the time he finally closed the computer and stretched out on the floor beside the couch, close enough to hear if Marcus needed him, his back ached and his eyes burned. But Marcus was breathing easier. The fever was down. They were both safe and warm and together. Everything else could wait until Monday. The weekend passed in a blur of fever management and cartoons. By Sunday afternoon, Marcus was well enough to complain about being bored, which Ethan took as a good sign. They spent the evening playing cards and watching a movie. Marcus wrapped in his blanket like a burrito, Ethan fielding work emails on his phone while trying not to let his son see how many there were. Monday morning arrived cold and clear. Ethan dropped a fully recovered Marcus at school, listening to the boy chatter excitedly about a science project, then headed to Hartwell Tower with his security presentation loaded on his laptop and determination settling over him like armor. The security team meeting went better than expected. Jennifer Cho listened to his presentation with sharp attention, asking pointed questions but nodding agreement at his conclusions. Tommy and the other network specialists took notes, occasionally interjecting with technical questions that showed they actually understood what Ethan was proposing. It was Marcus Winters who caused the explosion. He showed up 15 minutes into the meeting, uninvited, and stood at the back of the conference room with his arms crossed. "So let me get this straight," he said when Ethan finished presenting. "You want to force every employee in this company, including executives, to change their passwords every 30 days, implement two-factor authentication on all systems, and submit to quarterly security training? That's correct, Ethan said evenly. Do you have any idea how much productivity that's going to cost? The man-hours spent on password resets, the system slowdowns from authentication checks, the time wasted in training sessions. Less than the productivity we'd lose if we get hacked again. David Morse cost us $2 million in 43 minutes. I'm trying to prevent that from happening again. By treating everyone like they're potential criminals? Marcus's voice rose. By assuming our people can't be trusted? By assuming our systems have vulnerabilities, which they do. I documented them. Ethan pulled up his report. Every single one of these gaps represents a potential entry point for someone with malicious intent. We can either fix them now, proactively, or we can wait until someone exploits them and fix them in crisis mode. Your choice. It's not your choice to make, Marcus snapped. You've been here 1 week, and you're trying to restructure our entire security infrastructure based on, what? Your gut feeling? Based on evidence. Ethan's voice stayed calm, but he could feel heat rising in his chest. Based on the fact that I fixed a crisis your entire team couldn't solve. Based on the fact that I found 32 vulnerabilities in 5 days that your security team missed in 3 years. Jennifer Cho cleared her throat. Marcus, with all due respect, Mr. Brooks has a point. We did miss these vulnerabilities, and if he hadn't been here Friday, we'd be dealing with a lawsuit right now instead of a security upgrade. Marcus turned on her. So you're taking his side? I'm taking the side of protecting this company. That's my job. It's your job too, last time I checked. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut. Ethan watched Marcus's face cycle through anger, frustration, and something that looked like wounded pride. Fine, Marcus said finally. Implement your changes. Force everyone to jump through your security hoops. But when productivity drops and people start complaining, don't come crying to me. He walked out, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the walls. Jennifer looked at Ethan. That went well. Yeah. Ethan closed his laptop. I'm making friends everywhere. For what it's worth, you're right, about all of it. She stood, gathering her papers. Marcus is just territorial. Give him time to cool off. He'll come around. But as the week progressed, Marcus didn't cool off. If anything, he got worse. He sent emails questioning Ethan's decisions to the entire executive team. He scheduled competing meetings during Ethan's implementation sessions. He found reasons to delay budget approvals and slow down equipment orders. By Thursday, Ethan was ready to walk into Marcus's office and have it out with him. Instead, he found himself summoned to Lena's office at 4 in the afternoon. She was standing by her window when he arrived, looking out at the city with her arms crossed. Marcus came to see me, she said without turning around. He thinks you're overstepping, causing unnecessary disruption. He suggested I might want to reconsider your role here. Ethan's stomach dropped. And I told him to go to hell. She turned and her expression was fierce. Then I told him that if he undermined you one more time, I'd demote him so fast his head would spin. You're doing exactly what I hired you to do, Ethan. Don't let him make you doubt that. The relief was so intense it made him dizzy. Thank you. Don't thank me, just keep doing your job. She moved back to her desk, picking up a folder. I'm promoting you. Senior systems analyst was always temporary. As of Monday, you're director of cybersecurity. $20,000 raise, your own team, direct report to me instead of Jennifer. You've earned it. Ethan opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. I've been here 2 weeks. And in those 2 weeks, you've done more to protect this company than most people do in 2 years. Take the promotion, Ethan. Build your team. Fix our systems. And if Marcus or anyone else gives you trouble, you come straight to me. Understood? Understood. He left her office in a daze, clutching the promotion letter, his mind reeling. Director of cybersecurity, his own team. A salary that would let him give Marcus, his son, everything he'd never been able to provide before. He called Mrs. Chen from the elevator. Is everything okay? She asked immediately. Marcus is fine. He's doing his homework right now. Everything's perfect. Ethan had to stop, clear his throat. Tell him I'll be home by 6. And ask him what he wants for dinner. Anything he wants. We're celebrating tonight. Celebrating what? The fact that we're not stuck in the mud anymore. Marcus wanted pizza again, which made Ethan laugh, because of course he did. They sat at their small kitchen table that night, grease dripping from slices, while Ethan tried to explain what a promotion meant to an 8-year-old who mostly cared about whether they could afford the pizza with the stuffed crust now. So you're like, the boss? Marcus asked, cheese stretching from his mouth to the slice. Not the boss, but I get to hire people and make decisions about keeping the company safe. Ethan watched his son process this, saw the gears turning behind those dark eyes that looked so much like his mother's, it sometimes hurt to look at them directly. Like a superhero. Not exactly like a superhero, buddy. But you save the company from bad guys. That's what superheroes do. Marcus took another enormous bite, completely satisfied with his logic. Ethan supposed the kid had a point. He'd stopped David Morse from stealing millions. He was protecting Hartwell Industries from future attacks. Maybe it wasn't quite flying or super strength, but it was something. Yeah, he said softly. I guess it is kind of like that. They finished the pizza and Marcus fell asleep during a movie, sprawled across the couch with his head in Ethan's lap. Ethan sat there in the flickering television light, one hand resting on his son's hair, and let himself feel the full weight of how much had changed in 2 weeks. From eviction notices to promotions, from desperation to stability, from stuck in the mud to director of an entire department. It felt fragile, like something that could shatter if he breathed wrong. But for tonight, he let himself believe it was real. Monday morning brought new business cards, a larger office on the 53rd floor, and a staff meeting with the cybersecurity team that was now officially his to lead. Jennifer Cho had been gracious about the reorganization, even seemed relieved to hand off the technical oversight to someone who lived and breathed system security. I'm better with people anyway, she told Ethan when they'd met Friday to discuss the transition. You take the tech, I'll handle HR and compliance. We'll make a good team. Now Ethan stood in front of his new team, Jennifer, Tommy, and 2 new hires who'd started that morning, and tried to project confidence he didn't entirely feel. I know this is a big change, he began, looking at each of them in turn. Some of you have been here longer than I've been alive, probably, but we all want the same thing, to protect this company and the people who work here. That's going to require some adjustments, some new protocols, and yeah, some people are going to push back. But we do the work anyway. Questions? Tommy raised his hand. What do we do when executives refuse to comply? Because you know they will. They always think the rules don't apply to them. Then we escalate to Lena Hartwell. She's made it very clear that security protocols apply to everyone, no exceptions. Anyone who won't comply gets reported directly to her. Ethan pulled up the implementation timeline on the screen. We're starting with the critical vulnerabilities this week. Password rotations, 2-factor authentication, software updates. I want everything documented. Every system we touch, every change we make. Every person who gives us trouble. We're building a paper trail so tight that 6 months from now, nobody can say we didn't warn them. The meeting ran for 90 minutes. By the end, Ethan had assignments distributed, timelines established, and at least the tentative buy-in of his team. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. He spent the rest of the day buried in technical documentation, mapping out the security overhaul in granular detail. The work was complex and absorbing, the kind of problem-solving that made hours disappear. When his phone rang at 3 in the afternoon, he answered without looking at the caller ID. This is Ethan Brooks. Mr. Brooks, this is Principal Anderson from Marcus's school. Do you have a moment? Ethan's heart kicked into overdrive. Is Marcus okay? He's fine physically, but we had an incident today at recess. Marcus got into a fight with another student. We need you to come in. The world tilted slightly. Marcus didn't fight. Marcus was quiet, careful. The kid who avoided conflict because he'd learned early that the adults in his life had enough to worry about without adding his problems to the pile. I'll be there in 20 minutes. He grabbed his jacket and headed for the elevator, texting Patricia that he had a family emergency. The drive to the school felt endless, traffic conspiring to keep him trapped at every red light. By the time he pulled into the parking lot, his hands were shaking on the steering wheel. Principal Anderson met him in the main office, a woman in her 50s with iron gray hair and an expression that had seen every variety of child-related crisis. Marcus sat in a chair beside her desk, his face blotchy with tears, his knuckles scraped raw. "Dad." The word came out small and broken. Ethan knelt in front of his son, taking inventory. Scraped knuckles, yes. A bruise forming on his left cheek, torn shirt. But whole. Breathing. Safe. "What happened?" he asked quietly. Marcus's face crumpled. "Tyler said you were lying about your job. He said people like us don't get jobs at places like that. He said you probably got fired already and just didn't tell me. So I pushed him. And then he pushed me back. And then I hit him." The words landed like punches. Ethan closed his eyes briefly, pain and fury warring in his chest. Not at Marcus, at Tyler, at whatever poison that kid had absorbed from his parents, at the world that taught 8-year-olds that some people deserved less than others. "Marcus didn't start the fight," Principal Anderson said, her voice carefully neutral. "But he did escalate it physically. That's a violation of our conduct policy. Normally, that would mean a 3-day suspension." "Normally?" Ethan looked up at her. "I'm willing to make this a 1-day in-school suspension instead, given the provocation. But Mr. Brooks, Marcus needs to understand that violence isn't how we solve problems, no matter how angry we get." Ethan looked back at his son, saw the shame and defiance mixed on that small face, the desperate need to believe that what he'd done was justified. "She's right, buddy," Ethan said gently. "Tyler was wrong about what he said, but hitting him didn't make him less wrong. It just made you hurt too." "But he said you were lying." Marcus's voice broke on the words. "I couldn't just let him say that. I know it made you angry, but there are better ways to handle anger than fighting. You could have told a teacher. You could have walked away. You could have come home and told me, and we could have figured it out together." Ethan took his son's scraped hands carefully. "Violence doesn't prove you're right. It just proves you're angry, and anger alone doesn't fix anything." Marcus was crying again, silent tears tracking down his face. "I'm sorry." "I know you are. And you're going to apologize to Tyler too, even though what he said was cruel. Because you don't get to hurt people just because they hurt you first. That's not who we are. Understand?" The boy nodded miserably. Principal Anderson stood. "Marcus, why don't you wait outside my office while I talk to your father?" Marcus left, shoulders hunched, looking smaller than his 8 years. When the door closed behind him, the principal turned to Ethan. "I want you to know that I spoke with Tyler's parents. They were not receptive to hearing that their son had provoked the fight. They seem to believe that Marcus is a bad influence." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "I got the impression they have opinions about families like yours. Single parent, economic struggles. I don't share those opinions, Mr. Brooks. But I want you to be aware that Tyler's parents may cause problems going forward." Ethan felt something hard and cold settle in his stomach. "What kind of problems?" "Complaints. Questions about whether Marcus belongs at this school. The usual discriminatory nonsense dressed up as concern for their child's safety." She met his eyes directly. "I'll handle them. But you should know it's coming. Marcus does belong here. He's a good kid, smart, kind. He made one mistake." "I know. I've taught long enough to recognize the difference between a troubled child and a good child having a bad day. Marcus is the latter, but his parents are going to use this to push their narrative, and I wanted you to be prepared." Ethan drove Marcus home in silence, the boy staring out the window with his backpack clutched to his chest. When they got to the apartment, Marcus went straight to his room and closed the door. Ethan stood in the hallway outside, listening to the sound of muffled crying, warring with the urge to go in and fix it, and the knowledge that sometimes kids needed to sit with their feelings. He gave Marcus 30 minutes, then knocked gently on the door. "Can I come in?" A sniff. "Yeah." Marcus was lying on his bed, face down, the picture of misery. Ethan sat down on the edge of the mattress. "You want to talk about it? Are people always going to think we're not good enough?" The question hit Ethan like a freight train. He'd spent the last 2 weeks in a bubble, believing that the promotion meant they'd escape that narrative, that working at Hartwell Industries meant they were finally on solid ground. But Tyler's words had shattered that illusion, reminded him that success didn't automatically erase people's prejudices. Some people will, he said honestly. Some people look at us and make assumptions based on where we came from instead of where we're going. Those people are wrong, but they exist. Then why shouldn't I fight them? Because fighting them just reinforces what they already believe, that we're not good enough, that we don't belong. Ethan touched his son's shoulder gently. The best way to prove them wrong is to be so good they can't ignore you. To work so hard and be so kind and so smart that their assumptions look stupid. That's how you win, not with your fists, with who you are. Marcus rolled over, looking up at his father with red-rimmed eyes. Is that what you do at your job? Every single day. There are people at Hartwell who think I don't belong there, who think I got lucky, or that I'm in over my head. So I work harder than everyone else. I prove myself every single day, and slowly they're starting to see that I'm not just good enough. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. What if I can't be that good? You're already that good, buddy. You're smart and brave and you have a good heart. Those things matter more than where you live or how much money we have. You just have to believe it. Can you do that? Marcus nodded slowly. I'll try. That's all I'm asking. Ethan stood, ruffling his son's hair. Now come on, let's make dinner. And tomorrow you're going to apologize to Tyler, serve your in-school suspension, and then you're going to show that school exactly who Marcus Brooks is. Deal? Deal. They made spaghetti together, Marcus carefully measuring ingredients while Ethan chopped vegetables. It was mundane and normal, and exactly what they both needed. By the time they sat down to eat, some of the tension had drained from the boys' shoulders, replaced by cautious optimism. That night, after Marcus was asleep, Ethan sat at the kitchen table with his laptop and sent an email to Principal Anderson, thanking her for her handling of the situation and confirming that Marcus would complete his apology and suspension with grace. Then he opened a new message and stared at the blank screen for a long time before typing. The email went to Lena Hartwell. The subject line read, "Personal matter, request for advice." He explained the situation carefully, clinically, trying to keep emotion out of it. His son had been bullied, had responded with violence, was facing pushback from parents who thought he didn't belong. Ethan wasn't asking for special treatment, just wondering if she'd ever dealt with similar situations and had any wisdom to share. He sent it before he could second-guess himself, then closed his laptop and went to bed. The response came at 6 the next morning, while Ethan was making coffee and trying to convince Marcus to eat something before school. I dealt with similar situations my entire childhood, Lena had written. My father was a janitor. My mother cleaned houses. I went to school with kids whose parents were doctors and lawyers and CEOs. They made sure I knew I didn't belong, so I made sure I outworked every single one of them. By the time I graduated, I had the highest GPA in my class and scholarship offers from 8 universities. Your son has something those other kids don't, a parent who understands what he's going through. Use that. Teach him to channel anger into excellence. He'll be unstoppable. Ethan read the email 3 times, something loosening in his chest. He'd been so focused on Lena as his boss, as the powerful CEO who'd given him this chance, that he'd forgotten she was also a person who'd climbed from the same place he had, who understood. He showed the email to Marcus over breakfast. She really said that? The boy asked, eyes wide. Your boss's dad was a janitor? Yeah, and now she runs a billion-dollar company because she didn't let people tell her what she couldn't do. She showed them what she could do instead. Marcus absorbed this quietly, chewing his cereal. Then, Dad? Yeah, buddy. I'm going to be like her. When I grow up, I'm going to be so good at stuff that nobody can say I don't belong. Ethan felt his throat tighten. I believe you. The week that followed was grueling. Marcus served his suspension with quiet dignity, then returned to class and buried himself in schoolwork with an intensity that surprised his teacher. Tyler's parents filed a formal complaint with the school board, which Principal Anderson handled with professional detachment and a detailed account of their son's role in provoking the fight. The complaint was dismissed. At Hartwell, Ethan's security overhaul moved into full implementation. Password rotations went live company-wide, triggering exactly the flood of complaints Marcus Winters had predicted. Executives grumbled about the inconvenience. Department heads questioned the necessity. IT support was overwhelmed with reset requests. Ethan held firm. Every complaint got the same response. Security protocols apply to everyone. No exceptions. Escalate to Lena Hartwell if you have concerns. Most people didn't escalate. Those who did found themselves in Lena's office, getting a lecture about corporate responsibility and the cost of another David Morse incident. Word spread quickly. The complaints dried up. By Thursday, Ethan had implemented two-factor authentication on all critical systems and begun mandatory security training sessions. By Friday, he'd hired 2 additional cybersecurity specialists and ordered new firewall equipment that would close the most dangerous vulnerabilities in their network architecture. He was working late Friday night, finalizing the training schedule for the following week, when Lena appeared in his office doorway. "You're still here," she said. Ethan looked up from his computer, blinking away the eye strain from staring at screens for 12 hours. "Just finishing up some things." "It's 8 o'clock on a Friday. Go home to your son." "I will, soon. I just wanted to get this done before the weekend." Lena walked into his office uninvited and sat down in one of his visitor chairs. She looked tired, Ethan realized. Not physically exhausted, but carrying weight. "How's Marcus doing?" she asked. "After the incident at school?" "Better. He's channeling it into his schoolwork, determined to prove he belongs there." Ethan closed his laptop. "Thank you for the email. It helped." "More than you know." "I meant what I said about understanding what he's going through. People are going to underestimate him his entire life because of where he comes from. The key is teaching him to use that underestimation as fuel." She paused. "That's what I did. Every time someone looked at me and saw a janitor's daughter instead of a person with potential, I worked harder, studied longer, became undeniable. It's exhausting, but it's effective. It shouldn't have to be that way. No, it shouldn't, but it is. So we play the hand we're dealt, and we play it better than anyone expects." Lena stood, moving toward the window. "You've been here 3 weeks, Ethan. In that time, you've solved a crisis that would have bankrupted us, identified critical vulnerabilities, implemented company-wide security changes, and done it all while raising a child alone and dealing with discrimination from people who should know better. Do you have any idea how remarkable that is?" Ethan felt heat rise in his face. "I'm just doing my job. You're doing 3 people's jobs, and you're doing them exceptionally well, which is why I'm going to tell you something I need you to hear." She turned to face him directly. "You belong here, not because I gave you a chance, not because you got lucky, because you're brilliant at what you do, and this company is better with you in it. Don't let anyone, not Marcus Winters, not Tyler's parents, not that voice in your head that probably still sounds like every person who ever doubted you, make you question that. Understood?" Ethan's throat was tight. "Understood." "Good. Now go home. Spend the weekend with your son. Don't even think about work until Monday morning." She left, and Ethan sat there in his office, staring at the darkened window that reflected his own face back at him. He looked different than he had 3 weeks ago. Less haunted, less desperate, like someone who was finally starting to believe he might actually deserve the good things happening to him. He packed up his laptop and headed home. The weekend was quiet. Marcus seemed lighter somehow, like apologizing to Tyler and serving his suspension had lifted some weight off his shoulders. They went to the park Saturday afternoon, threw a football round, even though neither of them was particularly good at it, and ate ice cream while sitting on a bench watching other families do the same. "Dad?" Marcus said, chocolate ice cream smeared across his chin. "Thanks for not being mad at me about the fight." "I wasn't mad, buddy. I was worried. There's a difference." Tyler's dad was mad. I heard Principal Anderson talking to him on the phone. He was yelling so loud I could hear him from outside the office. Ethan felt his jaw tighten. Some people express themselves that way. It doesn't make them right. "Do you ever get mad? Like, really mad?" The question surprised him. Ethan thought about it, about rage and frustration, and all the times in the past 7 years when he'd wanted to scream at the universe for the unfairness of it all. Sarah dying, the medical bills, the evictions, the interviews that went nowhere, the constant grinding weight of trying to survive while raising a child alone. "Yeah," he said honestly, "I get mad. I got mad when your mom died and left us alone. I got mad every time someone looked at my resume and saw the gap and decided I wasn't worth hiring. I got mad when we got eviction notices because I couldn't afford rent and groceries at the same time." "What did you do?" I let myself feel it, but I didn't let it make me mean. I didn't let it turn me into someone who hurt other people just because I was hurting. I used it to keep going, to keep trying, to keep believing that things could get better. He looked down at his son. Anger is just energy, Marcus. It's what you do with that energy that matters. You can use it to destroy things, or you can use it to build something better. Marcus nodded slowly, processing this with the seriousness of a child who'd been forced to grow up too fast. I want to build something better. Then that's what we'll do, together. They finished their ice cream and walked home as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. It was one of those perfect moments that felt fragile and precious, the kind Ethan wanted to bottle up and save for the hard days he knew were still coming. Monday brought those hard days faster than he expected. Ethan arrived at the office at 7:30 to find his email inbox flooded with messages marked urgent. The subject lines made his stomach drop. Security breach, unauthorized access, data compromise. He pulled up the logs with shaking hands, scanning through gigabytes of information while his coffee went cold on his desk. Someone had attempted to breach their firewall overnight. The attempt had been sophisticated, targeted, and almost successful. Almost. The new security protocols Ethan had implemented had stopped it. Barely. The two-factor authentication had created enough friction to slow the attack. The updated firewall had identified the intrusion attempt and locked it out. But it had been close. Too close. Ethan pulled up the source of the attack and felt his blood run cold. The attempt had originated from inside the building, from a terminal in the operations department, from Marcus Winters' office. He sat back in his chair, mind racing. It could be a coincidence. Someone could have used Marcus's computer without permission, or Marcus himself could have been compromised, his credentials stolen. But the timing was too perfect. The attack had come 3 days after Marcus had publicly opposed Ethan's security measures. 3 days after Lena had threatened to demote him. Ethan pulled out his phone and called Jennifer Cho. "We have a problem," he said when she answered. "I need you in my office, now. And don't tell anyone else you're coming." Jennifer arrived within 10 minutes, her expression shifting from curious to alarmed as Ethan walked her through what he'd found. "Marcus Winters?" she said quietly. "You're sure? The logs don't lie. The breach attempt came from his terminal. Someone with his credentials tried to access our client database at 2:15 this morning. Could his credentials have been stolen? Possible, but unlikely. The attack was too targeted, too knowledgeable about our systems. Whoever did this knew exactly what they were looking for and how to get it. That suggests inside knowledge, advanced inside knowledge." Jennifer was quiet for a long moment, staring at the data on Ethan's screen. "What do you want to do?" "I want to confront him. But if I'm wrong, if this is somehow a mistake or a frame job, I'll have accused a senior executive of corporate espionage with nothing but circumstantial evidence. That could end my career here before it really starts. And if you're right and you don't act, the next attack might succeed. We could lose everything." Ethan rubbed his eyes, exhaustion and stress warring with the need to make the right call. "I need to talk to Lena before I do anything else. This is too big for me to handle alone." "Agreed. But Ethan, be careful. Marcus has allies in this building, powerful allies. If you accuse him without ironclad proof, they'll tear you apart." Ethan called Patricia and asked for an emergency meeting with Lena. She fit him in at 9, sliding him between a conference call and a board meeting. When he walked into her office with his laptop and the security logs, Lena took one look at his face and told her assistant to hold all calls. "What happened?" she asked, closing the door. Ethan told her. Everything. The breach attempt, the source, the timing. He showed her the logs, walked her through the technical details, laid out the evidence with methodical precision. When he finished, Lena sat back in her chair and was quiet for a long time. "You're certain it was his terminal?" she finally asked. "Certain. But I can't be certain it was him personally. Someone could have used his computer, stolen his credentials, framed him." "But you don't think so?" "No. I think he tried to sabotage my security overhaul by proving it doesn't work, by showing that even with all the new protocols, someone could still breach our systems. If he'd succeeded, it would have made me look incompetent, undermined everything I've built in the last 3 weeks. Lena's expression was unreadable. That's a serious accusation. I know. That's why I came to you first. If I'm wrong, I need you to tell me. If I'm right, I need you to back me up when this gets ugly. Because it will get ugly. It already is ugly. Lena stood, pacing to her window. Marcus has been with this company for 15 years. He's well-liked, well-connected. If we accuse him without absolute proof, the board will revolt. But if we ignore this and you're right, we're putting the entire company at risk. So what do we do? Lena turned to face him. We get proof. Absolute, incontrovertible proof. Can you do that? Ethan thought about the logs, about what else might be hidden in their systems, about the digital trail that even the smartest hackers always left behind. I can try, he said, but I'll need access to Marcus's computer, his email, his personal drives, everything. Then you'll have it. As of right now, this is a confidential internal investigation. You report directly to me. Nobody else knows. Not Jennifer, not Richard, nobody. If Marcus is guilty, I want to catch him red-handed. If he's innocent, I want to clear his name completely. Either way, we find the truth. Agreed? Agreed. Ethan spent the next 48 hours living in server logs and email archives, following digital breadcrumbs that Marcus Winters had left scattered across Hartwell's systems. What he found made him sick. The breach attempt wasn't Marcus's first rodeo. It was just his first mistake. For the past 6 months, Marcus had been slowly, carefully extracting proprietary data from Hartwell's servers, client lists, financial projections, trading algorithms. He'd been hiding it well, routing the transfers through proxy servers and dummy accounts. But Ethan's new security protocols had flagged the latest attempt, and once he knew what to look for, the rest became visible. Marcus Winters had been preparing to sell Hartwell's secrets to their competitors. The breach attempt had been his last data grab before making the sale, and Ethan's security overhaul had stopped him cold. On Wednesday afternoon, Ethan walked into Lena's office with a USB drive containing every piece of evidence he'd collected. She reviewed it in silence, her expression growing harder with each page. How much was he going to get? She asked quietly. $5 million from Garrison Financial. They're our biggest competitor. When was the sale supposed to happen? Friday, 2 days from now. Ethan closed his laptop. We have him, Lena, dead to rights. The question is what you want to do about it. Lena stood, straightening her jacket with sharp, precise movements. We're going to destroy him, professionally, legally, completely. He betrayed this company, betrayed everyone who works here. And he tried to sabotage you because you were doing your job too well. She looked at Ethan. Are you ready for this? Because once we move, there's no going back. Ethan thought about Marcus's hostile glares, his undermining emails, his attempts to get Ethan fired. Then he thought about everyone else at Hartwell who was just trying to do honest work, who deserved better than executives selling them out for profit. I'm ready, he said. Lena picked up her phone. Patricia, get me Richard Vance and Diana Chen, conference room A, 5 minutes, and tell security to seal Marcus Winters' office. Nobody in or out. She hung up and looked at Ethan. Let's go end this. Conference room A was the largest space on the executive floor, all glass walls and leather chairs arranged around a massive table that could seat 20. When Ethan and Lena walked in, Richard Vance was already there, looking confused and irritated at being summoned without explanation. Diana Chen arrived 30 seconds later, her legal pad already out, pen poised. What's this about? Richard asked. I have a meeting with the acquisitions team in 20 minutes. Cancel it, Lena said, her voice flat and hard. She gestured to Ethan. Show them. Ethan connected his laptop to the room's display system and pulled up the evidence. He walked them through it methodically, the same way he'd presented it to Lena. The breach attempt. The source. The 6 months of data theft hidden beneath layers of proxy servers and encrypted transfers. The planned sale to Garrison Financial. Richard's face went through several color changes as the presentation progressed. Diana Chen remained perfectly still, her pen moving in rapid shorthand across her legal pad. When Ethan finished, the room was silent except for the hum of the air conditioning. Marcus Winters, Richard said finally, his voice hollow. You're telling me Marcus Winters has been stealing from us for 6 months. Not just stealing, Ethan corrected, preparing to sell proprietary information to our biggest competitor, client lists, trading algorithms, financial projections, everything they'd need to undercut us in the market. How much damage could this have done? Diana asked, still writing. If the sale had gone through, Garrison could have poached our major clients, replicated our trading strategies, undercut our prices. Conservatively, we'd be looking at 50 to 100 million in lost revenue over the next year, potentially more. Richard's hands were shaking. And he was going to do this on Friday, 2 days from now? That was the timeline we found in his encrypted files. The buyer was ready. The price was set. $5 million. All he needed was one more data package, which he tried to grab Monday night. Ethan pulled up the breach attempt logs. My security protocol stopped him. That's when he knew he was running out of time. Diana looked up from her notes. Is this evidence admissible? Will it hold up in court? Every piece of it. I documented the chain of custody, used read-only access to preserve the original data, and followed proper forensic protocols throughout the investigation. Ethan met her eyes. I've done this before. At Morrison Engineering, we had an employee stealing designs to sell to overseas manufacturers. I built the case that sent him to prison for 3 years. You never mentioned that in your interviews, Richard said. You never asked what I did beyond engineering. You just saw the gap in my resume and assumed I hadn't been doing anything important. Ethan kept his voice neutral, but the words landed with weight. Lena leaned forward. Diana, what's our next move legally? We need to secure all physical and digital evidence immediately. Freeze his access to all systems, preserve his email, image his hard drives. Then we bring in law enforcement. Corporate espionage on this scale is a federal crime. FBI will want to be involved. Diana flipped a page in her legal pad. We also need to consider whether any other employees were involved. This kind of operation rarely happens in complete isolation. Jennifer Cho and I have been monitoring all high-level access for the past 48 hours, Ethan said. If there are accomplices, we haven't found them yet, but we're still looking. Richard was staring at the evidence on the screen, his expression somewhere between fury and devastation. 15 years. He's been with us 15 years. I trusted him. We all trusted him. Which is exactly why he was able to do this for so long, Lena said. Trust without verification is just negligence in a nice suit. She stood, smoothing her jacket. Richard, I need you to quietly notify the board. This will go public eventually, and they need to hear it from us first. Diana, start the legal proceedings. I want everything documented and every step defensible. Ethan, work with security to lock down Marcus's office and devices. Nobody touches anything without your approval. What about Marcus himself? Diana asked. Do we confront him? Give him a chance to explain? Lena's smile was cold and sharp. Oh, we're definitely going to confront him, but not until we have him completely boxed in. I want him to walk into a room and realize there's no way out, no excuses, no explanations, no possibility of talking his way free. Ethan, how long do you need to finish securing the evidence? 2 hours, maybe 3. Then we move at 4 o'clock. Conference room B, Marcus, the two of us, Richard, Diana, and head of security. Ethan, you'll present the evidence. Lena's eyes were hard as diamonds. Let's make sure he understands exactly what he's lost. The next 3 hours were a controlled frenzy of activity. Ethan worked with the security team to image Marcus's computer, preserve his email server, and collect every piece of physical evidence from his office. They found a burner phone in his desk drawer, encrypted messaging apps on his tablet, and handwritten notes outlining the sale timeline hidden in a locked filing cabinet. Each piece of evidence was photographed, documented, and secured in a way that would satisfy the most demanding prosecutor. By 3:45, Ethan had everything ready. At 3:55, Marcus Winters walked into conference room B looking annoyed and suspicious. What's this about, Lena? I have actual work to do, and Patricia was very mysterious about why you needed to see me immediately. His eyes swept the room, taking in the assembled group. Richard, Diana, head of security, Tom Harrison, Ethan. Why does this feel like an ambush? Sit down, Marcus, Lena said. Something in her tone made him hesitate. Then he pulled out a chair and sat, his posture defensive. Mr. Winters, Diana began, her voice professional and cold. We're here to discuss some irregularities that have been discovered in your computer usage and data access patterns. Before we begin, I need to inform you that you have the right to have legal counsel present for this conversation. Marcus's face went pale. Legal counsel? What the hell is this? This is your opportunity to explain why your computer was used to attempt a security breach Monday night, Lena said, and why we found evidence of systematic data theft going back 6 months, and why you've been communicating with executives at Garrison Financial about selling them proprietary Hartwell information for $5 million. The silence that followed was absolute. Marcus's mouth opened, closed, opened again. His eyes darted around the room like a trapped animal looking for an exit. I don't know what you're talking about, he said finally. My computer was breached? Someone must have stolen my credentials, used my terminal without my knowledge. That's an interesting theory, Ethan said. He pulled up the first slide on the display screen. Unfortunately, the evidence suggests otherwise. These are timestamps from your office security logs. They show that you were physically present in your office at 2:15 Monday morning when the breach attempt occurred. The building was locked. Security footage shows you entering at 1:53 a.m. and leaving at 2:47 a.m. During that 30-minute window, someone using your credentials from your terminal tried to access our client database. Marcus's jaw tightened. I was working late. I do that sometimes. Someone could have remotely accessed my computer while I was there. Also an interesting theory. Ethan pulled up another slide. Except the access logs show physical keyboard input, not remote access. And the typing patterns match your documented keystroke biometrics. Speed, rhythm, even the specific keys you tend to hit harder than others. It's like a fingerprint, Marcus. And this fingerprint is yours. You can't prove that. Actually, we can. We have 6 months of your typing patterns on file from normal work activity. The patterns from Monday night match with 97% accuracy. The probability of that being someone else is about the same as winning the lottery twice in one day. Marcus turned to Lena, his expression shifting from defensive to desperate. Lena, come on. We've worked together for 15 years. You know me. I would never... I thought I knew you, Lena interrupted, her voice like ice. Turns out I was wrong. Show him the rest, Ethan. Ethan pulled up the communications logs, emails between Marcus and a Garrison Financial executive named Robert Klein, discussing data packages and payment terms, encrypted messages laying out the timeline, bank account information for the offshore account where the $5 million was supposed to be transferred. With each new piece of evidence, Marcus seemed to shrink in his chair. We also found this, Ethan said, pulling up a scanned image of Marcus's handwritten notes. In your locked filing cabinet, your handwriting, your office, your plans. You even drew a little chart showing how you'd spend the money. Villa in the Caymans. That's nice. Expensive, but nice. Marcus's face had gone from pale to ashen. His hands were shaking where they rested on the table. Why? Richard asked, his voice thick with anger and betrayal. Why would you do this? We paid you well, treated you well. What more did you want? More than well, Marcus said bitterly. You paid me well, but guys like him, he jabbed a finger at Ethan, walk in off the street and get promoted over people who've been here for years, who've earned their positions, who've paid their dues. I watched Lena hand him a directorship after 2 weeks. 2 weeks. Do you know how long it took me to become head of operations? 8 years. 8 years of kissing ass and playing politics and being the good soldier. And some nobody who pulled her car out of the mud gets fast-tracked because she likes his sad backstory. Ethan felt like he'd been slapped. The naked resentment in Marcus's voice was stunning in its intensity. So this was about me? He asked quietly. This was about principle, Marcus snapped, about how this company rewards loyalty, or doesn't. I gave Hartwell 15 years of my life. And what did I get? Passed over for CEO when Lena was appointed. Sidelined when the real power moves happened. Forced to watch while people with half my experience got opportunities I'd been working toward my entire career. So you decided to steal from us, Lena said. That's your principle? Betraying everyone who works here because you felt underappreciated? I decided to take what I was owed, what I'd earned. Garrison was willing to pay for my knowledge, my expertise. They saw my value even if you didn't. We saw your value, Lena said, We just didn't see your character. That was our mistake. Diana Chen cleared her throat. Mr. Winters, I need to inform you that we will be turning this evidence over to federal authorities. The FBI will likely want to speak with you regarding charges of corporate espionage, theft of trade secrets, and wire fraud. These are federal crimes carrying sentences of up to 10 years per count. I strongly recommend you retain legal counsel immediately. The color drained from Marcus's face completely. You're having me arrested? We're having you prosecuted, Lena corrected. There's a difference. Arrested is just the first step. Marcus looked around the room desperately, searching for an ally, finding none. His eyes landed on Ethan last, and the hatred there was pure and undiluted. This is your fault, he said. All of this. You walked in here and ruined everything. If you'd just stayed in your lane, been grateful for your little rescue story and kept your head down, none of this would have happened. If I'd kept my head down, you would have succeeded, Ethan said. You would have sold our secrets, destroyed this company's competitive position, and cost hundreds of people their jobs. Also, you could buy a villa and feel important. You're right, Marcus. I didn't stay in my lane. I did my job. And my job was protecting this company from people like you. Tom Harrison, head of security, stood. Mr. Winters, I need you to surrender your access badge, your company laptop, and your phone. As of this moment, you're terminated for cause and banned from Hartwell premises. Security will escort you to collect your personal belongings. You have 15 minutes. Marcus stood slowly, his movements mechanical. He pulled his access badge from his belt and dropped it on the table with a plastic clatter. Then his phone. Then his laptop. 15 years, he said again, his voice hollow. I gave you 15 years. And you spent the last 6 months of those years planning to betray us, Lena said. You don't get credit for loyalty you were faking, Marcus. Now get out of my building. 2 security officers appeared in the doorway. Marcus walked out between them, his spine rigid with barely controlled fury. The conference room door closed behind him with a soft click that sounded final. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Then Richard let out a long, shaky breath. I need a drink. You need to call the board, Lena corrected. This is going to hit the news by tomorrow. We need to control the narrative before someone else does. She looked at Diana. How fast can we move on the legal side? FBI will want to review everything before we make any public statements. I'd estimate 48 to 72 hours before charges are filed officially. We should prepare a statement for the press emphasizing that our security protocols worked, the breach was contained, and we're cooperating fully with federal authorities. Make it happen. Lena turned to Ethan. You did good work, exceptional work, but I need you to understand that this is going to get ugly. Marcus has friends in this industry, people who will believe his version of events, that he's being scapegoated by a CEO who wanted to protect her pet project. You need to be ready for that. Ethan thought about Tyler's parents, about people who made assumptions based on prejudice instead of evidence. I'm ready. I hope so. Because tomorrow, you're going to be the subject of some very unpleasant speculation. The guy who brought down a 15-year veteran after being here a month. Some people will see you as a hero. Others will see you as a threat. Either way, your life is about to get complicated. She wasn't wrong. The story broke Thursday morning, splashed across financial news sites and industry blogs. The headlines varied in tone, but hit the same basic points. Senior Hartwell executive arrested in espionage case. FBI investigates corporate theft at major financial firm. Whistleblower exposes $1 million data sale plot. Some articles painted Ethan as a security expert who'd saved the company. Others questioned whether a relative newcomer might have misinterpreted innocent behavior as criminal activity. A few suggested that Lena Hartwell was using the incident to consolidate power and eliminate internal opposition. The comment sections were predictably toxic. Ethan made the mistake of reading them during his lunch break and immediately regretted it. People who'd never met him, never seen the evidence, never worked at Hartwell, had very strong opinions about his motives, his competence, and his character. Some defended him. Many didn't. You're reading the comments, Jennifer Cho said, appearing in his office doorway with 2 cups of coffee. Never read the comments. Noted. Ethan closed his laptop and accepted the coffee gratefully. I thought catching a corporate spy would be less controversial. You embarrassed powerful people, made them look incompetent. That's always going to generate backlash. She sat down across from him. For what it's worth, everyone in my department thinks you're a hero. Marcus was a disaster waiting to happen. You just accelerated the timeline. Just tell that to the people calling me an opportunist who's using this to advance my own career. Those people are idiots. Ignore them. Jennifer sipped her coffee. How's Marcus doing? Your Marcus, I mean, with all the press attention? Ethan sighed. He doesn't really understand it yet. He knows I caught a bad guy at work, which he thinks is cool, but he's 8. He doesn't read financial news or understand corporate espionage. Lucky him. Yeah. Ethan's phone buzzed with another news alert. He ignored it. I got 3 interview requests this morning. Bloomberg, Wall Street Journal, some cybersecurity podcast. Lena's office is handling all of them with no comment. Apparently, I'm not allowed to talk to the press until the legal situation is resolved. Probably smart. Anything you say now could be used against us in court. Jennifer finished her coffee and stood. Try to get some actual work done today. I know it's hard with all this noise, but the best thing you can do is keep your head down and let the evidence speak for itself. She left, and Ethan tried to follow her advice. He buried himself in security audits and protocol updates, anything to keep his mind off the growing media circus. By the time 5 o'clock rolled around, he had a splitting headache and a desperate need to see his son. Marcus was waiting at the apartment with Mrs. Chen when Ethan got home, bouncing with barely contained excitement. Dad, Mrs. Chen showed me the news on her phone. You caught a real spy, like James Bond. Ethan shot Mrs. Chen a look. She shrugged apologetically. He was very persistent and very proud of you. Not exactly like James Bond, buddy, Ethan said, kneeling down to his son's level. More like I found someone doing something wrong and made sure they got caught. But he was stealing secrets, and you stopped him. That's what spies do. Ethan couldn't help but smile at his son's enthusiasm. I guess when you put it that way, yeah, I stopped him. Marcus threw his arms around Ethan's neck. You're the coolest dad ever. The simple declarations, delivered with such absolute conviction, made Ethan's throat tight. He hugged his son back, breathing in the smell of school and playground and childhood innocence. Thanks, buddy. You're pretty cool yourself. After Mrs. Chen left and Marcus was busy with homework, Ethan's phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. Hello? Mr. Brooks? This is Special Agent Sarah Reeves with the FBI. I'm the lead investigator on the Hartwell Industries case. Do you have a few minutes to talk? Ethan's pulse kicked up. Yes? Of course. I've reviewed the evidence you collected. I have to say it's some of the most thorough forensic work I've seen from a civilian. You documented everything perfectly. I've done this before. Different case, different company, but similar situation. So I gathered from your background check. Morrison Engineering 2015. You built the case against Thomas Chen for industrial espionage. DA said it was one of the cleanest prosecutions he'd ever seen. Ethan had almost forgotten about that. It had been right before Sarah got sick, back when he'd still thought he had a future in engineering, before everything fell apart. That was a long time ago, he said. Good work doesn't expire, Mr. Brooks. The reason I'm calling is to let you know that we'll be filing formal charges against Marcus Winters tomorrow morning. Wire fraud, theft of trade secrets, and corporate espionage. Based on the evidence you collected, I'm confident we'll get a conviction. That's good news. It is, but I need to warn you about something. Winters has retained a very expensive defense attorney, someone who specializes in discrediting witnesses and creating reasonable doubt. They're going to come after you hard. Question your credentials, your motives, your investigative methods. They're going to try to paint you as an inexperienced newcomer who got lucky and misinterpreted innocent behavior. I documented everything. The evidence is solid. The evidence is excellent, but juries aren't always rational, and defense attorneys are good at creating confusion. I need you to be prepared for that. Can you handle aggressive cross-examination? Ethan thought about standing in front of a jury, defending his work while Marcus Winters' lawyer tried to tear him apart. The idea was terrifying, but necessary. I can handle it, he said. Good. We'll be in touch about deposition schedules. In the meantime, don't talk to the press. Don't discuss the case with anyone except your lawyer and our team, and keep doing exactly what you've been doing. The best defense against their attacks is continuing to be excellent at your job." She hung up, and Ethan sat there on his couch, staring at his phone, feeling the weight of what was coming settle onto his shoulders. A trial. Testimony. Cross-examination. His competence and character picked apart by lawyers whose job was to destroy his credibility. All while trying to do his job, raise his son, and maintain some semblance of normal life. He looked over at Marcus, who was sprawled on the floor with his math homework, tongue stuck out in concentration, as he worked through long division problems. The boy looked up and caught Ethan staring. "You okay, Dad?" "Yeah, buddy, I'm okay." And somehow, despite everything, it was true. He was okay. Better than okay. He had a job he was good at, a son he loved, and the knowledge that he'd done the right thing even when it was hard. Everything else would work itself out. The weekend passed quietly. Ethan took Marcus to a movie Saturday afternoon, grateful for the dark theater where nobody recognized him or cared about financial news. They ate popcorn and watched superheroes save the world with spectacular special effects and simple moral clarity. Good guys won, bad guys lost. Justice prevailed. If only real life were that clean. Sunday evening, Ethan's phone rang again. Lena Hartwell. "I hope I'm not interrupting family time," she said. "Marcus is reading before bed. I have a few minutes." "Good. I wanted to check in, see how you're holding up with all the media attention." "I'm managing. It's not fun, but I'm managing. I read some of the coverage. Some of it's pretty brutal." "Yeah." Ethan didn't elaborate. No point dwelling on it. "For what it's worth, the board met Friday afternoon. I gave them a full briefing on what happened. They unanimously approved a commendation for your work and authorized a $50,000 bonus for preventing what could have been a catastrophic loss." She paused. "They also wanted me to tell you that they have complete confidence in you, regardless of what certain journalists might be implying." Ethan felt something loosen in his chest. "That means a lot. Thank you. You earned it. And Ethan, when this goes to trial and Marcus's lawyers try to make you look incompetent or opportunistic, remember that the evidence speaks for itself. You didn't manufacture a crisis. You solved one. Anyone who actually looks at the facts will see that." "I hope you're right." "I am right. I'm always right. It's very annoying for people who work with me." Her tone was lighter now, almost teasing. "Get some rest. Tomorrow's going to be chaotic when the formal charges hit the news, but we'll get through it." She hung up, and Ethan sat there feeling simultaneously grateful and overwhelmed. The bonus alone would let him move to a better apartment, maybe even start a college fund for Marcus. But it also felt like a target on his back, more evidence for people who wanted to believe he'd orchestrated this whole thing for personal gain. He pushed the thought away and went to check on Marcus. The boy was asleep, his book open across his chest, his face peaceful in the glow of the nightlight. Ethan carefully removed the book, pulled the blanket up to his son's chin, and stood there for a moment just watching him breathe. Whatever happened next, trials, testimony, media scrutiny, he'd face it the same way he'd faced everything else in the last 7 years. One day at a time. One decision at a time. Doing what was right even when it was hard. He turned off the light and closed the door softly, then headed to his own room to try to sleep. Tomorrow, the formal charges would be announced. The real storm would begin. But tonight, his son was safe and sleeping. They had a roof over their heads and food in the fridge, and Ethan had done his job with integrity. For now, that was enough. Monday morning arrived with federal charges and another media firestorm. Ethan saw the headlines while waiting for his coffee to brew, Marcus still asleep in the next room, the apartment quiet except for the gurgle of the coffee maker and the buzz of his phone with news alerts he was trying to ignore. Marcus Winters, former head of operations at Hartwell Industries, had been formally charged with 3 counts of wire fraud, 2 counts of theft of trade secrets, and 1 count of corporate espionage. The Department of Justice press release praised the company's internal security measures and thorough investigative work. Ethan's name wasn't mentioned, but anyone following the story knew exactly who'd built the case. His phone rang before he'd finished his first cup. Patricia Voss. "Mr. Brooks, Ms. Hartwell wants you to know that we've received over 40 media requests for interviews this morning. We're declining all of them on your behalf. But you should be prepared for reporters potentially approaching you outside the building or at your son's school. Ethan's stomach dropped. At Marcus's school? It's a possibility. Some journalists have no boundaries when they're chasing a story. Ms. Hartwell has already contacted the school's principal to alert them to the situation. They've agreed to increase security and not release any information about your son to anyone claiming to be press. Thank you. I appreciate that. One more thing. The FBI wants to schedule your formal deposition for Thursday afternoon. Agent Reeves will call you directly to arrange the details. Ms. Hartwell says to take whatever time you need for that. And if you want company counsel present, we can arrange it. Ethan hung up and stared into his coffee, trying to process the fact that his life had become something requiring FBI depositions and school security protocols. 4 weeks ago, he'd been a man with nothing to lose. Now he had everything to lose, and the weight of it was almost crushing. He woke Marcus gently, got him dressed and fed, and drove him to school with one eye constantly checking the rearview mirror for anyone who might be following them. The school parking lot looked normal. Harried parents, sleepy children. The usual Monday morning chaos. But Ethan found himself scanning faces, looking for anyone who seemed too interested, too watchful. "Dad, you're being weird," Marcus observed as Ethan walked him to the front door instead of just dropping him at the curb like usual. "Just want to make sure you get in okay." "I'm not a baby. I can walk from the car to the door by myself." "Humor me, buddy." Marcus rolled his eyes with all the dramatic exasperation of an 8-year-old, but didn't argue further. They reached the entrance where Principal Anderson was greeting students. She caught Ethan's eye and gave him a subtle nod that said she understood the situation. "Have a good day," Ethan told his son. "I'll pick you up at 3. "You never pick me up. Mrs. Chen picks me up." "Today I'm picking you up, okay?" Marcus studied his father's face with those two old eyes. "Is everything okay?" Ethan knelt down, adjusting his son's backpack straps. "Everything's fine. I just want to spend some extra time with you this week. That okay?" "Yeah, that's okay." Marcus hugged him quickly, then ran inside to join his friends. Ethan drove to Hartwell Tower with his mind churning through worst-case scenarios. Reporters at the school, his son's picture in the news. Marcus, his Marcus, becoming collateral damage in a story about corporate espionage and legal battles. The lobby was crawling with security when he arrived. Tom Harrison had clearly taken the threat of media intrusion seriously. Ethan badged through and headed to the elevators, nodding at the 2 additional guards stationed there. The 53rd floor felt different when he stepped off. Quieter. People looked at him differently now, some with admiration, some with wariness, some with the kind of curiosity usually reserved for celebrities or disaster survivors. He was the man who'd brought down Marcus Winters. The hero or the troublemaker, depending on who you asked. Jennifer Cho was waiting at his office. "How are you holding up?" "I've had better Mondays." Ethan unlocked his door and they both went inside. "What's the temperature in the building?" "Mixed. Most people think you did the right thing. Some think the company overreacted. A few think Marcus got railroaded by someone trying to make a name for himself." She shrugged. "Corporate politics? Everyone has an opinion." "Great. But the security team is 100% behind you. We all know what could have happened if you hadn't caught this. 50 million in losses, maybe more. Clients jumping ship. Reputation destroyed. You saved this company, Ethan. Don't let the noise make you forget that." Her words helped, but they didn't erase the knot of anxiety in his stomach. Ethan spent the morning working on security audits, trying to focus on the technical details that had always been his refuge. Code didn't have opinions. Systems didn't judge. Problems either had solutions or they didn't. At noon, Lena summoned him to her office. She was standing by her window when he arrived, looking out at the city with her arms crossed. The pose was becoming familiar. Lena processing stress by staring at the skyline, as if the view could provide answers the people around her couldn't. "The DA called this morning," she said without turning around. "They want you to testify at the grand jury hearing next month. Help them secure the indictment." Agent Reeves mentioned that might happen. "Are you prepared for that? It's not going to be easy. Marcus's lawyer is apparently very good at making witnesses look unreliable." "I'm prepared." Ethan hoped he sounded more confident than he felt. "The evidence is solid. I documented everything correctly. They can question my experience or my motives all they want. but they can't argue with the facts. Lena turned to face him. You've been here a month, Ethan, 1 month. And in that time, you've solved a crisis that would have bankrupted us, overhauled our entire security infrastructure, caught a corporate spy, and built a federal case that the DOJ thinks is airtight. Do you have any idea how rare that is? I was just doing my job. Stop saying that. Her voice was sharp. You weren't just doing your job. You were doing 3 people's jobs, and you were doing them better than those 3 people combined. You need to own that. Because when you get on that witness stand and Marcus's lawyer tries to make you look like an inexperienced opportunist, you need to believe, really believe, that you earned everything that's happened to you. Ethan met her eyes. What if I don't believe it yet? Then fake it until you do. Because the people in this building are watching you. Some of them are inspired by your story. Some are threatened by it. Either way, they're watching. And what you show them now, how you handle this pressure, is going to define how they see you for years to come. She was right. Ethan knew she was right, but knowing it and feeling it were 2 different things. I'll do my best, he said finally. Your best is pretty damn exceptional. Remember that. The week crawled by in a blur of work and worry. Ethan threw himself into security protocols, hiring another specialist for his team, implementing the final phase of the infrastructure overhaul. He picked Marcus up from school every day, hypervigilant for reporters or photographers, but none materialized. Maybe they'd lost interest. Maybe they'd moved on to other stories. Thursday afternoon, he sat in a conference room with Agent Reeves and 2 federal prosecutors, walking them through every piece of evidence he'd collected on Marcus Winters. They asked detailed questions, probing for weaknesses in his methodology, testing his knowledge of forensic protocols. How did you know to look at keystroke biometrics? One of the prosecutors asked. I didn't, initially. I was looking at access logs and noticed patterns that seemed inconsistent with remote access. That led me to investigate physical keyboard usage, which led to the biometric analysis. It was just following the evidence where it led. And you're confident this evidence would hold up to expert scrutiny? Completely. Keystroke biometrics have been used in federal cases for over a decade. The technology is well established and widely accepted. They spent 3 hours going through everything. By the end, Agent Reeves was smiling. Mr. Brooks, if all our witnesses were this prepared, my job would be a lot easier. You're going to do great at the grand jury hearing. Ethan left the deposition feeling cautiously optimistic. Maybe this would work out. Maybe the evidence really would speak for itself. That optimism lasted exactly 2 days. Saturday morning, Ethan woke to his phone exploding with notifications. Text messages from Jennifer, from Patricia, from people whose numbers he barely recognized. He grabbed the phone with shaking hands and opened the first link someone had sent him. The article was on a major financial news site. The headline made his blood run cold. Hartwell whistleblower's troubled past raises questions about corporate espionage case. The piece was a hatchet job, pure and simple. It detailed Ethan's departure from Morrison Engineering, framing it not as a father choosing to care for his dying wife and infant son, but as a promising engineer who abandoned his career under unclear circumstances. It mentioned the eviction notices, the financial struggles, the gap in his resume. It quoted anonymous sources suggesting Ethan might have fabricated or exaggerated evidence against Marcus Winters to secure his position at Hartwell. The article never quite accused him of anything illegal. It just asked questions, raised doubts, painted a picture of a desperate man who might do desperate things. Ethan read it 3 times, feeling sicker with each pass. Then he read the comments, which were predictably vicious. People who'd never met him debating whether he was a hero or a con artist. Speculation about his motives, his character, his fitness as a parent. His phone rang. Lena. I saw it, she said without preamble. It's garbage. Completely unsubstantiated innuendo dressed up as journalism. Our legal team is already preparing a response. They talked to people from Morrison Engineering, people who knew me. Ethan's voice sounded hollow in his own ears. Someone gave them information about my wife, about Marcus, about things I've never discussed publicly. Marcus Winters' legal team is behind this. It has their fingerprints all over it. They're trying to poison the jury pool before the case even goes to trial. It's a classic defense strategy. It's working. Look at the comments. People believe it. People believe lots of things that aren't true. That doesn't make them right. Lena's voice was firm. Ethan, listen to me. This is going to get worse before it gets better. They're going to dig into every aspect of your life looking for ammunition. But you know what they're not going to find? Any actual evidence that you did anything wrong. Because you didn't. Ethan wanted to believe her. But he kept thinking about Marcus reading this someday. His son finding articles questioning whether his father was honest, whether he'd earned his success or manufactured it. "What do I do?" he asked. "You keep doing your job. You prepare for the grand jury hearing. You let our lawyers handle the media. And you remember that the truth matters more than speculation." She hung up, and Ethan sat there on his couch, staring at his phone, feeling the walls closing in. Marcus found him there an hour later, still in his pajamas, still staring at nothing. "Dad? Are you okay?" Ethan looked at his son and made a decision. He was done hiding, done pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. Marcus deserved the truth. "Come sit with me, buddy." The boy climbed onto the couch, tucking himself against Ethan's side. "What's wrong? Remember how I caught the bad guy at work? The one who was stealing?" "Yeah." "Well, his lawyers are trying to make it look like maybe I made a mistake. Like maybe I got the wrong person. They're saying things about me that aren't true, and it's making me really upset." Marcus was quiet for a moment, processing. "But you didn't make a mistake, right? You caught the right guy?" "I did. The evidence is very clear, but sometimes people don't want to believe the evidence because it doesn't match what they want to be true. Like Tyler's parents. They didn't want to believe Tyler started the fight, even though Principal Anderson told them he did. Out of the mouths of babes." Ethan pulled his son closer. "Yeah, exactly like that. So what are you going to do?" "I'm going to tell the truth, even if people don't want to hear it, even if it's hard. Because that's what we do, right? We tell the truth and we do what's right, even when it's scary." Marcus nodded against his shoulder. "You're really brave, Dad." "I don't feel very brave right now." "That's what makes it brave. Doing it even when you're scared." Ethan didn't know whether to laugh or cry. His 8-year-old son was giving him courage lessons. When had the kid gotten so wise? "You're right," he said softly. "Thank you for reminding me." They spent the rest of the weekend together, deliberately avoiding news and social media. They went to the park, played video games, made elaborate dinners that were more fun than delicious. Ethan tried to be present, to focus on his son instead of the storm brewing around them. Monday brought another article, this one questioning whether Hartwell Industries had rushed to judgment to protect their new security director. Tuesday brought a blog post from a former Morrison engineering colleague claiming Ethan had always been overly ambitious and willing to cut corners. By Wednesday, Ethan was numb to it. The attacks kept coming, but they all said the same thing in different words. He was desperate, opportunistic, possibly dishonest. The accusations never quite crossed the line into libel. The lawyers were too smart for that. But the implication was clear. Thursday morning, he got a call from Agent Reeves. "I need you to stay calm," she said. "Marcus Winter's defense team has filed a motion to exclude your testimony from the grand jury hearing. They're arguing that you lack the proper credentials to conduct a forensic investigation and that your evidence should be considered tainted." Ethan's hand tightened on the phone. "Can they do that?" "They can try. The judge will rule on the motion Friday afternoon. But Mr. Brooks, I want you to understand something. This is a Hail Mary. They know your evidence is solid. They know they're going to lose at trial if we get that far. So they're trying to get your testimony excluded before we even get to trial. It probably won't work." "Probably." "The evidence speaks for itself. Keystroke biometrics, access logs, encrypted communications, financial records. Even if they exclude your testimony, we still have all of that. Your analysis just makes it easier for a jury to understand. But the facts exist independent of you. So why do they want me excluded?" "Because you're compelling. You're sympathetic. You're the guy who stopped to help someone in a storm and ended up saving a company. Juries like stories like that. Stories with clear heroes and villains. They want to take away the hero narrative and make this about dry technical evidence that's easier to confuse." She was right. Ethan could see the strategy clearly now, make him look unreliable, then make the case look complicated, create enough doubt that a jury might hesitate. "What do I need to do?" he asked. "Sit tight. Let the process work. and prepare for the grand jury hearing like the motion will be denied, because it probably will be. Friday afternoon, Ethan sat in his office, refreshing his email every 30 seconds, waiting for news about the judge's ruling. His team knew better than to bother him. Even Jennifer stayed away, sending supportive texts instead of visiting in person. At 3:15, his phone rang. Agent Reeves. "Motion denied," she said. "The judge called it exactly what it was, a transparent attempt to exclude credible evidence. Your testimony stands. Grand jury hearing is Tuesday at 9 a.m. Ethan let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. "Thank you." "Don't thank me. Thank yourself for doing everything by the book. The judge specifically noted the quality of your forensic work in her ruling, said it was exemplary for a civilian investigator with prior relevant experience. That's high praise." When he got home that night, Ethan told Marcus they were going out for dinner, somewhere nice, a celebration. "What are we celebrating?" the boy asked. "Doing the right thing, even when it's hard." They went to a steakhouse, the kind of place with cloth napkins and prices that would have been unthinkable 2 months ago. Marcus ordered a steak bigger than his head and looked so happy that Ethan felt his chest ache with love and gratitude. "Dad," Marcus said around a mouthful of mashed potatoes, "are the bad guys going to jail?" "Probably. If the jury agrees that he did what we think he did." "And you're going to tell them? The jury?" "First, I have to convince some other people called a grand jury that there's enough evidence for a trial. But yeah, eventually I might have to tell a jury what I found." Marcus considered this seriously. "Will you be scared?" "Probably. But you'll do it anyway." "Yeah, I'll do it anyway. Because it's the right thing." "Because it's the right thing." Marcus grinned, his face smeared with steak sauce. "You really are like a superhero, Dad." Tuesday morning arrived cold and clear. Ethan dropped Marcus at school early, then drove downtown to the federal courthouse. Agent Reeves met him at the security checkpoint, guiding him through metal detectors and x-ray machines to a waiting room outside the grand jury chamber. "You're going to do great," she said. "Just tell them what you found and how you found it. Answer their questions honestly. Don't try to be clever or evasive. Just be yourself." "What if they don't believe me?" "They'll believe you. The evidence is too strong not to. And you're a credible witness. Smart, thorough, no axe to grind. You're exactly the kind of person grand juries trust." Ethan wished he felt as confident as she sounded. The grand jury chamber was smaller than he'd expected, with rows of seats filled with ordinary people who'd been pulled from their lives to decide whether there was enough evidence to put Marcus Winters on trial. They looked at Ethan with curiosity and expectation as he took his seat at the front of the room. The prosecutor walked him through his credentials first, his education, his work at Morrison Engineering, the previous case he'd built. Then they moved to Hartwell Industries, the David Morse crisis, his promotion, the discovery of Marcus Winters' activities. "Mr. Brooks, can you walk the jury through how you discovered the breach attempt?" Ethan took a breath and began. He explained the security logs, the access patterns, the timestamp analysis. He showed them the evidence, charts, graphs, data visualizations that made complex technical concepts accessible. He walked them through keystroke biometrics, explaining how the technology worked and why it was reliable. The grand jurors listened intently, asking questions when they didn't understand something. Ethan answered patiently, never condescending, always clear. When they got to the encrypted communications between Marcus and Garrison Financial, Ethan pulled up the messages on the display screen. These communications were encrypted using military-grade protocols, but Mr. Winters made a critical error. He used the same encryption key across multiple devices, and one of those devices was his company laptop, which we were able to image. Once we had the key, decrypting the messages was straightforward. "And these messages clearly show intent to sell proprietary information?" one juror asked. "They show price negotiations, timeline discussions, and specific requests for certain types of data. Yes, they clearly show intent." The testimony lasted 3 hours. By the end, Ethan's throat was dry and his back ached from sitting up straight, but he felt good about how it had gone. The jurors seemed engaged, convinced. Nobody had looked at him with skepticism or doubt. Agent Reeves met him outside the chamber. "That was perfect. Exactly what we needed." "How long until they decide?" "Could be hours, could be days." Grand juries move at their own pace. But based on what I saw in there, I'd be shocked if they don't return an indictment. The call came the next afternoon. The grand jury had voted to indict Marcus Winters on all charges. The trial was scheduled for 8 weeks out. Agent Reeves thanked Ethan for his testimony and said they'd be in touch about trial preparation. Ethan sat at his desk, staring at his phone, feeling not triumph but relief. One step closer to resolution. One step closer to putting this behind him. Lena appeared in his doorway 5 minutes later. "I heard. Congratulations." "Thanks." Ethan set his phone down. "How's the company handling all this?" "Better than expected. The board is pleased with how quickly we contained the damage. Our stock price actually went up this week. Investors like knowing we take security seriously." She sat down across from him. "You did good work, Ethan. Really good work. I just hope it's over soon. The media attention, the speculation, I want my life back." "It will be. Once the trial concludes and Winters goes to prison, the story will die down. People will move on to the next scandal. That's how these things work." She was right, but the wait felt interminable. The next 8 weeks were the strangest of Ethan's life. He worked his job, refined security protocols, managed his team. He spent evenings with Marcus, helping with homework and playing games and being present in all the ways that mattered. But underneath it all was the constant awareness that a trial was coming. That he'd have to testify again, this time with Marcus Winters' defense attorney trying to destroy him. The media coverage continued, though it began to shift. More articles questioned the strength of the defense's case. Legal analysts pointed out that the evidence appeared overwhelming. A few journalists even wrote positive profiles of Ethan, framing him as an example of how doing the right thing could change someone's life. Marcus, handled it all with the resilience of children who'd learned early that life wasn't always fair, but you kept going anyway. His grades stayed strong. He made new friends. He stopped asking about the trial, trusting that his father would handle it. The trial began on a Monday in February, 2 months after that rainy morning when Ethan had pulled a stranger's car from the mud. He sat in the gallery watching jury selection, 12 strangers who'd decide Marcus Winters' fate. Ethan testified on day 3. He walked through the same evidence he'd presented to the grand jury, but this time Marcus Winters' attorney was there to challenge him. The lawyer was exactly what Agent Reeves had warned about: sharp, aggressive, skilled at creating confusion. He questioned Ethan's credentials, his experience, his methodology. He suggested that Ethan might have misinterpreted innocent behavior. He implied that Ethan's rapid promotion created a conflict of interest that tainted his investigation. But Ethan had prepared for this. He answered every question calmly, referring to evidence, citing established forensic protocols. When the lawyer tried to confuse him with technical jargon, Ethan politely corrected his misunderstanding and explained the concept clearly for the jury. When the lawyer suggested Ethan might have fabricated evidence to secure his position, Ethan looked him in the eye and said, "The evidence exists independent of me. Anyone with the proper training could verify my findings. The timestamps, the access logs, the encrypted communications, they're all real, they're all documented, and they all point to the same conclusion. Mr. Winters attempted to steal proprietary information and sell it to a competitor. That's not interpretation, that's fact." The cross-examination lasted 6 hours. By the end, Ethan was exhausted but steady. He'd stood his ground. He'd defended his work. He'd told the truth. The jury deliberated for 2 days. When they returned, their verdict was unanimous on all counts. Guilty. Marcus Winters stood as the verdict was read, his face pale and expressionless. The judge thanked the jury for their service and scheduled sentencing for 3 weeks out. Ethan left the courthouse and drove straight to Marcus's school, arriving 20 minutes early for pickup. He sat in his car, hands shaking on the steering wheel, feeling the weight of 2 months lifting off his shoulders. When Marcus climbed into the back seat, chattering about a science project, Ethan turned around to look at his son. "It's over, buddy. The trial's over." "Did you win?" "Yeah, we won." "Because you told the truth?" "Because I told the truth, and the truth mattered." Marcus grinned. "I knew you would win." They went home and Ethan made spaghetti, their celebration meal apparently, and they ate together at their small kitchen table in their apartment that didn't feel so small anymore. After dinner, Marcus fell asleep on the couch during a movie, and Ethan sat there watching his son breathe, feeling grateful and exhausted and hopeful all at once. The sentencing hearing came 3 weeks later. Marcus Winters received 7 years in federal prison and a $3 million fine. The judge called his actions a profound betrayal of trust and noted that stronger punishment was warranted given the potential damage to Hartwell Industries and its employees. The media coverage was extensive but shorter-lived than Ethan had feared. Within a week, other stories had taken over the news cycle. Within a month, people stopped recognizing him in the elevator. His life began to feel normal again, or what passed for normal now. 6 months after the trial, Alina called Ethan to her office. He'd been expecting this conversation eventually, the question of whether he still fit at Hartwell now that the crisis had passed, now that the story had been told. "I have an offer for you," she said without preamble. "Vice President of Security. You'd oversee cybersecurity, physical security, and data protection for all Hartwell operations. Salary is $250,000, full executive benefits, equity package. You'd report directly to me and have a seat in senior leadership meetings." Ethan stared at her. "Vice President? You've earned it. You've built a security infrastructure that's become the industry standard. Other companies are copying what you implemented here. You've testified as an expert witness in 2 federal cases. You're one of the most respected security professionals in the financial sector, and you did it all in less than a year. I don't know what to say. Say yes. Take the job. Keep protecting this company. Keep being excellent at what you do." Ethan thought about Marcus, about stability, about the future they could build now, about how far they'd come from that rainy morning when he'd made a choice that cost him everything and gave him everything back. "Yes," he said. "I'll take it." Lena smiled. "Good. Now get out of my office. You have a department to run." That evening, Ethan picked up Marcus from school and took him to the park. They sat on a bench eating ice cream, watching other kids play, enjoying the kind of ordinary moment that had once seemed impossibly far away. "Dad?" Marcus said. "Remember when you said we were stuck in the mud?" "I remember." "We're not stuck anymore, are we?" Ethan looked at his son, this brave, smart, resilient kid who'd weathered every storm with grace and felt his throat tighten with emotion. "No, buddy, we're not stuck anymore. Because you stopped to help that lady. Because I stopped to help, and because I kept going even when things got hard, and because I had you to come home to every day. That's what made the difference." Marcus leaned against his shoulder, chocolate ice cream melting down his hand. "I'm glad you stopped." "Me too." They finished their ice cream as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Tomorrow, Ethan would start his new role as vice president. He'd lead his team, protect the company, continue building something meaningful. But tonight, he was just a father sitting with his son, grateful for second chances and rainy mornings and the choices we make when no one's watching. 3 years later, Ethan stood at the front of an auditorium at the annual Cybersecurity Leadership Conference, looking out at 500 professionals who'd come to hear him speak about building resilient security infrastructure. His presentation detailed the Hartwell case study, how a comprehensive security overhaul had prevented a catastrophic data breach and caught a corporate spy. After the presentation, during the Q&A session, a young woman in the front row raised her hand. "Mr. Brooks, your story is incredibly inspiring, but can you talk about what it was like personally, going from unemployment to vice president in less than a year? That's not a typical career trajectory." Ethan smiled. "No, it's not typical, but here's what I learned. Sometimes the most important decisions we make aren't about our careers at all. They're about our character. I stopped to help someone in a storm because it was the right thing to do, not because I thought it would lead anywhere. I investigated Marcus Winters thoroughly because protecting the company was my job, not because I was trying to advance my career. I testified truthfully at trial because integrity mattered more than convenience." He paused, looking out at the audience. "Success isn't about being in the right place at the right time. It's about being the right person when opportunity comes. It's about doing good work even when nobody's watching. It's about making the hard choices because they're right, not because they're easy. And it's about remembering that the person you are when everything's going wrong is more important than the person you are when everything's going right." The audience applauded. Ethan answered a few more questions, then stepped off stage to find Lena waiting in the wings. "That was good," she said. "Very inspiring. You told me to own my story. I'm owning it." "Yes, you are. And speaking of owning things, I have another offer for you." Ethan laughed. "Lena, I just became VP 3 years ago. What could you possibly be offering me now?" "Chief Security Officer. You'd oversee security for all Hartwell operations globally. It's a C-suite position, board seat included. We're expanding into international markets, and I need someone I trust running point on protecting those operations." Ethan looked at her, this woman who'd changed his life by being stuck in the mud on a rainy morning, who'd seen something in him that most people missed, who'd given him not just a second chance, but a platform to become more than he'd ever imagined possible. "Can I think about it?" he asked. "Take your time. But Ethan, you've already proven you can do the job. Now you just have to believe you deserve it." That night, Ethan picked up Marcus from middle school. His son was 11 now, growing tall and confident, and they drove home through streets that had become familiar and comfortable. Their apartment had become a house in a good neighborhood. The eviction notices were a distant memory. Life had become stable, secure, abundant. "How was the conference?" Marcus asked. "Good, really good. They asked me to speak again next year." "Because you're kind of a big deal now." Ethan grinned at his son's teasing tone. "I don't know about that." "Dad, you're literally famous in cybersecurity. My computer science teacher knows who you are. That's weird. Sorry for being embarrassing." "You're not embarrassing. You're actually pretty cool, for a dad." Marcus paused. "Also, Lena offered you another promotion, didn't she?" "How did you know that?" "Because she always does, and you always act all surprised like you don't deserve it. But you do deserve it, Dad. You work really hard. You're really good at what you do, and you're like genuinely a good person. That's rare." Ethan had to blink against the sudden burning in his eyes. When had his kid become so wise? "Thanks, buddy. That means a lot." "So are you going to take it?" "I don't know yet. It's a big decision. More responsibility, more travel. It might mean less time with you." Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Do you remember what you told me when I was worried about you taking the job at Hartwell, back when we were still in the old apartment?" "What did I tell you?" "You said that sometimes the right thing to do is scary, but you do it anyway because that's what makes it right. This promotion scares you because you don't want to mess up, and you don't want to be away from me more. But I think you should take it, because you'll be amazing at it. And I'm not a little kid anymore. I'll be okay if you travel sometimes." Ethan pulled the car over and turned to look at his son, this incredible human he'd raised through grief and poverty and uncertainty. This kid who'd learned resilience and wisdom and compassion, not from lectures, but from watching his father navigate impossible choices with integrity. "When did you get so smart?" he asked. Marcus grinned. "I learned from the best." 2 weeks later, Ethan accepted the position of Chief Security Officer. 6 months after that, he was implementing security protocols for Hartwell's operations in 7 countries. A year after that, he was testifying before Congress about corporate cybersecurity best practices, his expertise sought by governments and corporations worldwide. But the accomplishment he was most proud of had nothing to do with titles or recognition. It was Marcus thriving in school, confident and kind, already talking about studying computer science in college. It was the home they'd built together, stable and full of laughter. It was the knowledge that when his son looked at him, he saw a father who'd faced impossible odds and refused to give up. On the 5-year anniversary of that rainy morning, Ethan drove past the old industrial road where he'd pulled Lena's car from the mud. The area had been redeveloped, new buildings, new businesses, barely recognizable from that desperate morning when he'd made a choice that changed everything. He stopped the car at the turnout where Lena had been stuck, now paved and landscaped. For a moment, he just sat there, remembering. The rain, the fear, the interview he'd missed, the woman who'd turned out to be his salvation. His phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. "Don't forget parent-teacher conference tonight at 6. Also, I aced my CS midterm. You're welcome for being awesome." Ethan laughed and texted back, "Congratulations on the midterm. I'll be there at 6. Love you, buddy." He pulled back onto the road and headed home, the setting sun painting the sky in familiar shades of gold. 5 years ago, he'd been a man with nothing to lose, making a choice in the rain because it was right, not because it was smart. That choice had cost him an interview, but given him a future. It had destroyed one path, but created another. It had proven that sometimes the moments that feel like endings are actually beginnings in disguise. Ethan Brooks had stopped to help a stranger in a storm, and in doing so, he'd found his way out of the mud and into a life he'd never dared to dream possible. Not because he'd gotten lucky, though luck had played a role, but because when it mattered most, he'd chosen character over convenience, integrity over opportunity, and kindness over self-preservation. Those choices had made all the difference.